apocalyptic in the third decade of this year's century, lost on the path of least existence. Anyone who's claiming they are not afraid is lying where they stand. Let's enjoy the last summer in America. This one might be the end. Gradually trained to ignore all suffering, unless it affects me as someone close. Every little ripple will go out in a snowball wave of apathy, crushing everything you wanna save the most. Streets once all laid out in dirt, now covered with concrete. So enjoy the last summer in America. You can't afford to sleep. Seems everyone waits desperately, uncertain of their God, unaware a whole life that the kingdom's getting robbed. I got my prescription to take my head and pray for some relief. Side effects of drowsiness, insomnia, and yellow teeth. Win an education if you don't get killed or play the lottery. So enjoy the last summer in America, just as seen on TV. From the firmament to be the proof, so everyone will know. The emperors that you all worship never had no clothes. From the mountains to the prairies to the oceans wide with foam. Enjoy the last summer in America. It's now illegal to roam. Farm no more, brother's such a dick. All the value is diluted by reserve. Bait and switch a dream, violence everyone constrained, but they will still deny. Programmed in our hands, every moment of our life. The bombs will burst in the rocket's red glare. Join the last summer in America. This winter will prepare. Enjoy the last summer in America. The land lost in prayer. Enjoy the last summer in America. You think that you can.
Alrighty. Well, welcome back, you guys, to another episode of These People Are Idiots, episode 7, I do believe. Back here with Cyprian Ivanov today, and yeah, it's been chaos and apocalyptic and turmoil on all fronts. So let's start off with, how are things over on the East Coast?
Well, life in DC is crazy, but it's also getting into the news a bit. One of the council members got arrested by the FBI for bribery. He took about 150 grand in a bribe for violence interrupters. Basically, progressives love sending barely trained, unarmed people to try to defuse violent crime in one of the most violent cities in the country. without belonging to a union or having safety equipment or training the way cops do. They consider that to be progress. And because there's no measurable deliverables, the millions of dollars spent on it are easy fodder for corruption. So one guy got arrested for taking bribes for extending a contract, and now the whole country gets to ponder that situation.
All right, that one's all new to me. Life's been chaos in my life the last 2 weeks, so I've like barely been tuning into the news. So let's get into specifics. Who was the person that did this? And like, so this is all new to me.
Crayon White, who I have a bit of a grudge against because he was also in favor of decriminalizing fare evasion, which resulted in a spike in violent crime in the metro system. So anybody who uses mass transit should probably care about fare evasion. But,
so is that just being able to like hop on a bus or a train and just not pay and like get on, get off?
right.
Okay.
But the experience of New York City was that when they cracked down on fare evasion, they suddenly found that they were catching murderers, rapists, other violent criminals in a higher rate than normal. Turns out, when people use public transit a lot, the people who are most likely to commit fare evasion are also usually guilty of other crimes.
You know, I never really thought of that, but we have the EMX bus system here, and back when I was using drugs and drinking all the time, like I didn't really have much money in my pocket because I was always spending it on drugs. So I would always get on the bus, and I could usually get away with bullshitting the security guard, on, like getting on and off the bus, and no one would ever look into anything about me or kick me off. Usually, I'd make up a pregnant wife that needed something or was in labor. That I'd usually get away with it that way, but yeah, I guess looking back, the more they allowed that, the more shadier the characters on the bus seemed to be. Like, I've literally seen people shooting up heroin and smoking meth on the bus. Like,
I
it's.
once saw a used roll of toilet paper on a bus.
I've definitely seen some shit smears, along with some blood, too. Oh, God. I've almost had guns pulled out on me on the fucking bus. Like, I've. Public transportation in the United States is not safe. Sorry, not to detract from all that, but yeah, no, I can see how that would gravitate criminality.
So you also have transit workers who get attacked. And you know why the National Guard was in several New York City metro stations? It was because a lot of the train drivers refused to drive unless they got more protection.
Can't blame them. And I mean, those poor train drivers having to go to work every day wondering if they're going to run over some poor woman that just got fucking thrown out in front of them. Like, the level of existentialism that has to come with that job now? Mm-mm.
Well, fortunately, people being thrown on the train tracks was fairly infrequent. At least about 10 years ago, it was only about 12 cases a year in New York City. But people trying to stab train drivers, that's been a real sudden spike.
It's getting scary. It's looking more like the UK. God damn.
So I have a bit of a grudge against people who are in favor of decriminalizing fare evasion, because that's one of the simplest things you can do to catch violent criminals and to make sure the mass transit system works. Because if the mass transit system gets too scary, people are going to stop taking it, and that's going to just clog up the streets with more cars, or a lot of people just staying home and not doing anything. So if you live in the middle of what is basically a commuter hub, because half the people who work in DC live outside of DC, if the mass transit system goes down, there goes a lot of the money the local businesses make, there go the employees, there goes the social life.
Well, and what would some of the arguments in favor of it be? It'd probably be like, well, how are homeless people supposed to get to their job if they can't get on the train and get there without money in their pocket? It's like, it's all these feel-good arguments they want to make, but in actuality and practice.
There's also heavily subsidized cards for people in certain categories like kids. They get heavily subsidized fare cards. Low-income people can get subsidized fare cards. And a bunch of the homeless shelters also are the point of contact for accessing some of those benefits. So
it's not like there's nothing.
right. And there was a free circulator in parts of DC already. So
Man. And it's like, you know, obviously having never gone to like New York or DC or really anywhere on the East Coast like that, at least on as an adult, like, you know, I feel like everybody here would have an opinion on what's happening in New York with y'all system. And I feel like the thousands of people here that would want to chirp up would actually, like, collectively in all other 49 states, have an effect on what's actually happening in New York. And it's like, we should all get a say, but like, it's like, to what degree? You know, it's a lot of know-it-allism, I feel like, that leads to this shit.
well, when New York was debating congestion pricing, so do people coming into New York City have to pay extra? There were a bunch of people from DC commenting and trying to harass politicians in New York City.
Jeez.
And now the activists for congestion pricing in New York City are trying to push it here in DC. Same thing happens with bike activism. And there's this weird overlap between bike activists and far left politics. I don't know why.
Oh, with people riding bikes?
It's not just people riding a bike because they personally like it or they think it's healthy for them. It's people trying to redesign roads to exclude cars and, oh, here's our main evacuation route. And they want to cut off a lane to add a bike lane. I mean, why can't you be satisfied with the bike lanes on the parallel streets? No, it has to be this one.
I got some frame of perspective on this one because, like, down in Texas, people would ride bikes. Like, I mean, you'd see people riding a bike occasionally. Here, more people ride bikes than ride fucking cars. And most of the time when I'm driving into Eugene, there's people with a sign there that are just like, stop riding your car, take public transportation or ride a bike. It's better. And I'm like, I do not live close enough for that shit. I'm sorry. I've done my bus years. But everybody rides a bike and there's bike lanes everywhere. I'm sorry. People on bikes a lot of the time are fucking entitled fucking assholes. Because here's the thing. You got your fucking bike lane. You got it. You got what you wanted. They will take up the middle of the road. Half these people pretend like they're cars now. And they will go in a 40, 50 mile per hour lane in front of you on their bike, trying to keep up, not giving a shit. And this varies from tweakers to old ladies in yoga pants. Like, it is everybody. It's not a particular kind of person. It's like a level of entitlement that says, I have a bike and I know the law and ha 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 and eat shit. And it's like, but you're not even following the damn law. Very prevalent here.
I don't know why. It seems to be a national phenomenon. When I was in Minneapolis, I saw a critical mass bike ride. I recognized a bunch of people from Socialist Alternative there.
Well, I think a lot of it too is they want to phase out cars. They want to phase out gas-powered vehicles, and quite frankly, they don't want us to have fucking cars in the end. So it's like, I think that there is a globalist push to kind of be like, you're gonna ride bikes now.
If I'm getting groceries, I'm taking the freaking bus. I am not going to be happy with cutting off another lane on the major roads for bikes if it's already hard enough to get a bus.
It's a fucking nightmare. It's a nightmare to drive anywhere. It's a nightmare to get on the bus. It's a nightmare to get on the train. But it's good to ride a bike, ain't it? They make it look like it's the best thing in the fucking world, and you want to go get a bike too, just like we all want to go live in vans now. These fuckers.
And here's the thing. In a bus accident, you at least have some metal protecting you from an oncoming vehicle. You don't have that on a bike.
Dude, that's the thing. I'm like scared I'm gonna flatten half of these people. Like when they're like in the bike lane, but they're like right on the edge of it, and like traffic's like right here, and you're right here, and you barely have a squeeze. Because the thing about Eugene and Springfield, Oregon, the roads are narrow as fuck. It's like they built roads, and then one day cars came along, and they were like, "Oh shit, well, we still have to put cars here." And it's like, some roads are so narrow you can only park on one side of the road.
DC too.
Oh, is it? I hate it. It's so claustrophobic. But yeah, then the bikes make it worse. I have a little bit of a grudge with the bike people. I know it's healthier, and I know it's a good way of life, and I know it pulls a lot of bad people or good people out of a bad spot. But
I've seen enough near accidents. I mean, just yesterday, I was going to the grocery store, and this guy rides a bike and misses me by about 6 inches. Didn't ring a bell. Didn't sound a warning. Just whizzed past me.
jeez. Man, tell you a horrible story from childhood. One of my favorite games to play, because I was a mischievous little kid. I'd go vandalize the neighborhood and ding dong ditch and throw rocks at things I shouldn't throw rocks at. But I think it was a good solid years when I was living in Odessa. I played a game called car ditching that I would get all the neighborhood kids on. And we would all get on our bikes and we would ride in the middle of the road onto oncoming traffic. And the goal was to get as close to the front of the car as possible before bailing out at the last second. And I did that for years. And the thing that made me stop doing it was I did it to the wrong fucking guy. Older guy in a black SUV. I did it in a richer neighborhood. I had to like turn around because he busted a Yui and he's like screaming and cussing at me. And I'm like, oh shit. So I cut across this like large field. It's just like low grass. So I can like ride my bike across it. And this dude pulls up over onto the field and he's like swerving and speeding after me. He's like, get back here, you little buck. And I'm just like, oh shit. And I keep riding until I fall off my bike. And he's just like, how would you like it if I fucking killed you? He's like, how would you like it if I ran you the fuck over? And I'm just sitting here. I was like 13, 14 maybe at the time, and like thinking this man was about to fucking murder me. And then he just got back in his SUV and drove away. And like I said, I obviously learned at that point it wasn't a great thing to do. But as I get older, I'm like, that dude's fucking granddaughter could have got rolled over. Yeah, whatever. Something could have really happened in this guy's life that involved a bike, and it's like people just
I know a guy. Well, I met a guy who had been driving a. No, he wasn't driving a cab at the time, but he had been driving for someone, and a guy just walked out into traffic, and he hit the guy. So the cops investigated and said, okay, the driver was not at fault, the pedestrian was at fault. The pedestrian's dead.
Mhm.
So being kind of a sensitive guy, the driver was kind of emotional about that even a week later.
How could you not be? That'd probably be with me for the rest of my life. Like, holy shit, I killed a guy. Like, regardless of who's innocent or not, that's what I would be thinking is my hands, my steering wheel, my car, his body. Like, all because someone didn't want to fucking pay attention, or was it not pay attention or suicidal? Because I've seen both.
It seems to have been not paying attention.
Jesus Christ. Yeah, there's a little across from the bus station in Eugene, there's a little market there called the Kiva. And great place, great breakfast burritos. Love going in there. It's a little hippy dippy store. But my husband and I were going one night, and this is like around the protest era. We thought a protest had broken out in front of us, and we're just like, holy shit, there's like a bunch of black guys out there and people in black and like hoodies and shit. And it just turned out it was winter, and there just happened to be a bunch of black guys around. But they're like redirecting traffic. They're like, go around, go this way. They're pointing to where we need to go, and I'm just like, oh fuck, what's about to fucking happen? I hope we're not like driving into something bad. And there was just a corpse of somebody laying there in the fucking road. And I think it was like a day or two later, they caught the guy. May have been a week later. But some dude in a silver truck was just speeding through by the bus stop as fast as he fucking could and just slammed into this woman and then just kept going. And apparently, I think the story was he was drunk and intoxicated and that he freaked out and didn't know what to do. So he just like kept on fucking driving and then tried to hide until the cops found him. But like the look in his eye on that mugshot, I've never seen like such a distraught like photograph in my entire life. Like you could see it in his eyes to where he's just like, this was not on the cards. This was not supposed to happen. And it's just such a horrible thing all around. But ugh, there's too much of this shit happening. Like, way too much of this shit happening right now.
A lot of the traffic laws rely on people making basic safety judgments. If they can't make basic safety judgments, bad things are gonna freaking happen.
It's like stoplights and shit sound silly. It's like we should know at this point, and I'm not even gonna pretend like I don't occasionally run a red light whenever I look around and there's nobody and it's the middle of the night. It's like whatever. But realistically, it's like, yeah, it's like civic order and society seems to degrade. People seem to be giving a lot less of a fuck about all these little things.
I've seen a lot of very near accidents because people decided to do an illegal U-turn at a major intersection.
Oh yeah. I've seen a lot of upside down vehicles this last year too. Like a lot of upside down vehicles.
When I moved to my apartment, I used to see an accident a week, and that was before COVID. And one of the interesting things is that as police were pulled back, the fatalities in car accidents increased.
Oh yeah.
Anybody want to guess why?
Well, there'll be times I'll be driving down the road and I'm like, fuck, I'm speeding. I'm going 80 and a fucking 60 because you have to drive slow as fuck through Oregon, and the Texan in me really fucking hates that. So I'll be driving fast, and then I'm like, there's a cop. Fuck, I'm going 20 miles over the speed limit. The cop will usually cut me off like I'm the jackass and go around me. Like, they don't really care about speeding or a lot of these things. I think they care more about if they catch you at like an intersection doing something crazy, but like, not most things here you can get away with without a cop interfering with you. And that's a horrifying thing to say. Thought it was a utopian thing to say at one point, but now I'm seeing it. I'm like, oh no, they should probably be able to do their job.
Yippee! I mean, there. I don't know who said this, but hell is where you get what you want.
Yeah, it's the devil's alluring. Like, I don't know. This shit's just. And speaking of the devil getting you what you want, I want to go into this one a little bit because this might be a good segue into this. So I told you about the author that I'm going to be speaking with, Paul Stobbs. I think he wrote a book called "The Nephilim Looked Like Clowns," and I've been thinking for like a minute on this channel. I'm like, there's something to like the clown and clown psychology and all of this that has to do with what's going on right now. But what we're like seeing, I feel like most people can agree is like, even if you're not religious, it feels demonic. Things feel satanic. People feel possessed. And this is a subject that I want to like go into like responsibly and the least amount of crazy that I fucking can. So like there's different categories I feel like of looking at this is like metaphysical, psychological, political, social. There's something about the clown, the jester, and the fool that seems to be transpiring all of this. And tell the audience out there, I was going to go and have my one more psychedelic trip out in the woods this weekend. And this guy's work backed me off of it because, when we're talking about hell being alluring and bringing you in, I think that's what a lot of the drugs are doing to these kids. And in terms of, start with the metaphysical and the psychedelic, I guess. I told you the story at one point about how there was a reptilian entity that I encountered under the influence of psychedelic mushrooms, painted like a clown in a white hood, and how I've been kind of using that as a meditation tool because that appeared to me about a time that I decided to walk away from Antifa. This whole guy's channel is a warning to people like me and what we experienced and what the imagery represents and the kind of person that it gets into. And I I think one of the lines that he called me out on is, just because you're in a realm of, you know, these beautiful sights and sounds and colors and everything is just so pretty and you've never seen anything like it in your entire life, it's all a ploy. The devil's convincing, essentially. And it's just like, this isn't good for you. This isn't what you want to be. This isn't where you want to be. The land of stripes and spots and eyes. He's just like, these are, in his estimation, demonic forces. But I think a lot of what we're seeing right now with not even just the kids, but humanity itself, particularly in the United States, is a beckoning to darkness. And that beckoning to darkness is coming with a lot of pretty colors and pretty promises. And the longer I meditate on that experience, I think that's kind of what a lot of it's been presented to me as needing to experience in order to understand the current moment. And so this is a crazier part. So I'm going to deep dive it with him and go really deep into it. And I hope I'm not getting too crazy off track here. But I didn't think of it at the moment, but whenever I was having my experience in the bathroom, my buddy was in my art studio, which is covered in occult stuff, clown stuff, spray painting. Like every wall was covered in a piece of art or eyes or something crazy. While I was having my experience, my buddy was in my studio, and he explained to me that he felt that he was being channeled to do this drawing. And I feel like this picture just kind of represents it all. It's just, this is what's going on in our heads. This is what's going on in our psychology. And originally I thought it was a demon or an imp that he was drawing. And then the way the guy describes it in his channel, he's like, these are the jester hat, the party hat, you know, they're horns, these are demons coming out. And you can like look into the image. The scarier part about this, he was drawing things that I experienced in the other room, not having any communication with him. You know, when I saw imps coming out of the shower with their teeth, he was drawing imps coming out of the shower with their teeth. He was drawing a portal with a shard coming through it. You know, diamonds in the eyes that were making contact, you know, the mushrooms going downward. Just all this crazy stuff. And it's something I can go into for hours. I won't ramble about too hard, but I think we're, in a very literal sense, possibly summoning hell, summoning a darkness, summoning something within ourselves from our darkest desires, our deepest hatred. And again, you can manifest that in terms of demonology or psychology or anything, because I think that's the thing about the psychedelic experience is no matter what you believe, it hits some level of reality as a meditative tool. But I have a notebook where I'm really trying to break this one down. I feel like it's a hard one to explain. I hope I'm not sounding too batshit here.
No, it makes a degree of sense. Now, I'm skeptical of the idea that it's that you are necessarily seeing the same thing, or that you're seeing some independent dimension or whatever. But in terms of human psychology, that I can be a lot more certain about. And when a bunch of people end up doing the same thing, you start to see effects from that. So some effects of scale start to almost look like unintelligent behavior. So there is a mystical concept of the egregore, which is a mass of human behavior creates an entity or a state of being that almost becomes anthropomorphic.
In the dragon, an example of that, from my understanding, because wasn't the dragon meant to like, or there's a theory it represents like the serpent being like predatory and like how we were afraid of like the snakes as well as birds and how that kind of like morphed into one image over time. Is that about the same concept?
Um, I mean, I think there's some symbolism there that slaying the dragon oftentimes referred to a social act and not to an effect in society and not necessarily an individual reptilian creature.
Mm.
Um, so when people went to a totalitarian country, they would often talk about kind of a spirit of evil, the machine, other ways of referring to a way of being that had a huge social effect, separate from just from every individual thing that happened.
Kind of like there was an undertone of evil dictating everybody's actions in a sense. Like,
Yeah. So what's the reason for that? I mean, you can talk about psychological barriers once broken allow bad incentives to seep into areas that they wouldn't normally. The power of temptation becomes greater in a system that's built on tempting people. But the result is that there's so much of the common behavior that it takes on a kind of a tangible emotional weight on people.
yeah, and I think a lot of this too, at least in our society, I think there's something to do with masks. Because that's one thing that when I was watching this guy's video and he was talking about the subject, he kept hitting was the tie between the clowns and wanting to conceal your face and to conceal your behavior. And looking at that in terms of anarchy and people's behavior in the streets.
It's well known that when people feel anonymous, they are more likely to engage uh, in harmful behavior. I mean, people are arguing about that since Greek times with the ring of Gyges. Imagine that a man finds a ring that makes him invisible. What would he do?
Probably nothing good.
So that's one way to read The Hobbit or The Lord of the Rings. Here's a ring that makes someone go invisible. What do they do?
Oh, is that a question for me?
I mean, that's something to think about.
Oh.
But when it's also known that online people will engage in more antisocial behavior online, like spamming someone's social media with all sorts of expletives and death threats, etc. Most people don't do that. Some people do. So there's kind of the loser psychopath who barely stays on the right side of the law, ends up spamming a lot of death threats and uh, tries to hurt people online because it's harder to get caught and punished that way. But anonymity often makes people feel comfortable doing the worst things they can.
I got a good example of that. So my old job, the one I just left, we had a guy who probably is still calling, would call, I think at one point he called 30 plus times a night, and the cops wouldn't do anything about it. My store allegedly reported it to the cops, but he would call every night, ask for the girls, learned their names, knew their names, probably came into the store at some point, and would, he's like, do you like breast milk? He's like, do you have breast milk? Do you touch yourself when you go to the bathroom? Do you have any kids? Like creepy shit like that where, dude, I went off on the phone with him once. I'm like, you know, you're talking to little girls, right, motherfucker? Like he was talking to like 17-year-olds and shit. And he's like, that's okay. And dude, this happened hundreds of fucking I'm glad I'm away from the store. God damn it. But the manager's just like, it is what it is. I labeled him in the phone as B milk guy so that they would at least know. And then I think I accidentally said it for everybody. So everybody who called the store would come in as B milk guy. So that was my fuck up. But yeah, just feeling empowered to do that because no one was holding him accountable. And then they'd make like a game of it most nights and they'd pass the phone around and we'd all be like, guys, you're just fucking encouraging this little freak. And he would be jerking him off on the phone. You could hear it. He put the phone up to his nuts and shit. This has happened for months. This has maybe happened for close to over a year at this point. I shit you not. Like, give people an inch, they'll take a fucking mile.
Oh, yeah. Well, that sort of problem existed in the past, but probably not to that same degree.
No, I feel like in the past you could do it 3 or 4 or 5 times, and then the cops would be like knocking on some doors, be like, okay, we have the technology to trace calls. We found you. Come on, we're going to talk to the judge and bring the transcripts. Bada bing, bada boom, right? Nope. Not in Oregon.
Oh, golly.
Can't make this shit up. Again, I wish I were. But yeah, I know Jordan Peterson has the argument where he's just like, own your words. You shouldn't be able to be anonymous online. But then I can also see arguments going in the other direction of that. I feel like it's a finicky balance. I just don't.
It-
It's
I mean,
uncontrollable at this point. It's just Pandora's box, I feel like.
yeah, it's kind of you need freedom in order to do the right thing, and you need anonymity in order to protest things that need to be protested. But also, some people abuse it. So,
Too many. But I think that's starting to shift. I'll share with the audience a little bit what you and I were talking about before. I guess from what I'm hearing, Antifa in Eugene has been threatening the LGBT community with guns and rifles and death threats. And without giving away too much information, I don't want to jinx anything. I think this guy is still thinking it over, but I think I found my first ex-Antifa member who's had enough and may want to voice his opinion on some shit. And it sounds like there's a lot of other people too. And it was very nice. I share with them, just sitting down in a room and hearing somebody saying the exact same things I've been saying on this fucking channel. Like, we're getting to the point where they're not going to be able to run around and wear a mask and fuck around with people anymore. There's people who are ready to fight this. My only cry right now is to not handle it violently, to handle it with exposure and with speaking your truth and your story. But
and I will say in DC, the Log Cabin Republicans, a gay Republican group, hasn't been to DC Pride for a couple of years because of the death threats. But a lot of people don't know about it. So there is social pressure that can be exerted that is nonviolent and hasn't been done yet. Let people know about gay people being threatened.
because we're in a bad spot right now. This guy's straight. He's not a part of the community. He's just like, I'm an ally. He's more left than I am. He's using all the pronouns. He's doing all the things. He's trying not to offend. I'm kind of joking with him, like, you don't gotta walk on eggshells around me, buddy. It's fine. But he's seeing the same things, and he's like, this is Marxist, and he's like, this is not good, and this leads to a lot of death and destruction. He's like, he's seen the same type of shit that I've seen and that I've been trying to present to people. And hopefully, if he takes this opportunity, we can really make this a place for people to speak out. And if there's others here, not only that, but I can make my town, Eugene, I can make this the area where that change sprouts. And we can really drive these motherfuckers out and be like, go to work. Go hang out with your family. Go get a fucking girlfriend. Go get fucking laid. Drop the fucking dope. Stop going to the fucking parties. You're causing problems for the rest of us. Because that's exactly what he was seeing too. He's like, you do a bunch of fucking drugs, you pretend you're all about the politics, you go home and you live fucked up lives. And the permission to be an asshole, I think, is going out the window. And so long as we can dictate the flow in a non-violent direction, that's really going to stick it to Antifa or far left groups, any of them, is because they think the only option they have is violence, when in reality, again, we just have to run our mouths. When people want to shut you up, you have to do the opposite. And clearly they want the gay community and the LGBT community in my town to shut the fuck up. And I'm going to tell them, no, you shut the fuck up. And again, go get a fucking life. Because that's what the rest of us are doing while y'all are trying to sit here and fuck with it. But Yeah, all that side. I just had to get that out there because I've been feeling like so much better about life since I met this guy, and just a really solid dude. And may come on anonymous, simply under the condition that these are very threatening characters, and Eugene is not a large place. So I may be granting him permission in that aspect, but I think that this is going to help pry things open, and there's going to be a lot more other people coming in the future at the very least. Because you shouldn't be able to hide from your actions. You should own them. And quite frankly, these people should own them publicly. There should be trials for a lot of these people. There should be investigations. A lot of these people need to be seen before the court.
I, I think the Klan Act should be enforced again. Most
I mean,
famous, the
sorry.
Klan Acts uh, had punishments when someone committed a crime using a mask.
Yeah. So take it was instituted in regards to the Ku Klux Klan.
Oddly enough, yes.
And I mean, you don't just get to pretend you're not something and then go and create that something and think you're exempt from it. Quite frankly, that's probably the humiliation that this organization needs is, yeah, you are no different than the Klan. You are no different than a bunch of rowdy white boys getting together in the woods, stitching together outfits with your mama and your daddy, going out and burning shit down and telling everybody what they should think and how they should fucking behave. I think Eugene, Oregon, and quite frankly, the Democratic Party and most blue states in the area or in the United States, and quite frankly, all over the world, need to get back to saying fuck Nazis. These people are Nazis. Fuck Nazis. Through and through. You're a bunch of Nazi ass punk fucking bitches that destroyed our fucking town. And I lost my last friend in Antifa, any connection to that, the other day, because she wanted to share with me some dead Mitch McConnell joke. And what I told her was Mitch McConnell didn't burn down Eugene, Oregon and destroy everything. Brats like you and me did. And the difference between me and this friend that this person I'm no longer friends with is I took accountability. And I think this motherfucker wants to take accountability. And I think a bunch of other people want to take accountability too. And it's time for that. I'm getting fired up, Cyprian. It's happening.
I'm being quiet right now because it's fascinating to hear you talk. But yeah, a lot of people have made terrible mistakes in their past, but morally grappling with those mistakes gives people the perspective to avoid future mistakes and to do good things in the future. Denial is not going to make the situation any better.
No. And that's the thing I see in this guy. You know, I've only gotten to know him a little bit. I went and smoked some weed with him at his house and got to talk with him for a little. But what I saw in this guy is he wants to make a change. He wants to put down some poisons. He wants to work on his family life. You know, he's evaluating things in his life. He's soul searching. He's very much like me, probably even more so the same level I was when back then. Is just like he's just a really bubbly guy and just wants to do good and doesn't want fucking Nazis or communists in his fucking neighborhood because he just wants to feel safe and to not feel threatened and doesn't want his friends going out and feeling like they can't be threatened. And now he's faced with reality. He's like, fuck, my gay friends, my trans friends can't go out and feel safe anymore without having a pistol pointed in their face. And the cops can't do anything about it in a city that we've basically given power over to these assholes from. Fuck that. Fuck that.
Have you considered reaching out and trying to talk to Fred Sargent?
Ooh, that would be fun. I will. Because yeah, I think I actually spoke to someone who spoke to him, so there could be a
I mean,
connection there.
Josh spoke to Fred Sargent.
Yeah, okay, I didn't want to say it out loud, but yeah. Yeah, they had a fantastic interview together because yeah, the cis white man that started Pride or gay liberation rather, but yeah, the real fucking heroes. The real civic leaders, the real people who made history. You know,
And Fred Sargent had also been in the Navy. I think it was the Navy, I can't remember. And he'd been a cop at a time when cops didn't like gay people.
Yep. And just for context, for anybody out there who doesn't know, Fred Sargent was the actual one who helped start Stonewall. He was the one who got people fired up. There's an interview, I'll post it here, where Marsha, whatever her name, started Pride.
The Christopher Street Liberation Day march.
That's right. That's right. And then, yeah, and then that morphed into Pride. And not a black trans woman. She was passed out on a park bench, and she has really great interviews, and she seems like she was a really cool person, and I feel like I'd enjoy hanging out with her. But, you know, this is the guy the LGBT community wants you to hide because wants to hide is, and he got coffee poured on him. He got assaulted. I think they kicked his cane out from under him. They ripped up his sign. And because how could that guy be a civic leader? He's white. He's cis. This isn't the guy. This can't be any guy. This is just some asshole here with a sign that I don't agree with. So, coffee.
Fred Sargent held up a sign saying no blackface, no woman face. By the way, Fred Sargent had been around back when blackface was considered comedy. And he's old enough to remember when drag performances were not quite well, okay, they were certainly of an adult nature. And now the imitation, the insulting imitation of women is something that he can recognize because he was there when blackface was a thing.
And you know, I don't even feel like back in 2015 when I came out, I don't even feel like drag was this offensive because like when I started coming out as gay and I like discovered like drag, you know, watching Alaska Thunderfuck and like tuning into RuPaul and like Bob the Drag Queen, I was like, I feel like these are people. Sorry, go ahead.
There are people who do it who aren't sadistic with it.
Well, no, because here's the thing: is they appreciate women. That was the difference. I feel like is they appreciated women. They loved female empowerment. They loved the characters they did because they were like, you know, I'm a gay man, and women always seem to be the ones that were there for me. And there was like an admiration, but now it's just gone into parody, and just it just doesn't feel the same. Like I loved drag. I loved going to drag shows, but like the last drag show I went to, they were screaming about how we need to burn down a Dutch Brothers coffee shop because they're stealing from native land. And most people walked out of the room at that point because most people are going to go drink Dutch Brothers in the morning before they went to go to their fucking job because everybody loves Dutch Brothers. And yes, what they're doing with native land is probably not good. I don't know enough details, but the whole burn it down shit, like, bitch, we just want to see some drag. And then this drag queen was also like little girl dressed like a girly or a girl, so it wasn't even actual drag. So it's like that's going out the window. It doesn't feel real, you know. It's inclusive drag. I'm like, okay, well, this feels retarded.
It's a shit show.
And that's drag kings aside, by the way. I want to throw out there's some good drag kings out there, but watching these like gender confused girls who don't think they're girls go on stage and pretend to be a girl, it's weird, dude.
Oh, that. Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, no, just oh yeah. There's just so many layers. It's just chaos, man.
For those who don't know, there are biological females who decide that they're male, who then dress as women. That is the thing that they biologically are, because drag is such a cultural phenomenon.
It took me like an hour and a half to figure it out together. I'm like, how is this drag? At a point where I was still questioning what was happening with the LGBT community. And that's one of the things where I had to be like, oh, because it's not this gender identity shit isn't real and this bitch is confused.
Or, and here's me being a cynical bastard, maybe women feel grossly uncomfortable with the current culture, so they feel like they have to fake being something else just to feel safe.
Yeah. And yeah, and let's shine a light on that, because again, I don't even want to say most. I can't think of a single girl in my life that hasn't been raped or molested or stalked or had a psycho killer ex-boyfriend that threatens to kill them if they don't leave. And I'm not even going to tie that into being a particular set of people, because I'm thinking of middle class people, upper class people, people in shitty ass apartments, people who are homeless. These ladies are going through some rough ass shit, and the men don't want to be men right now. You know, and that leaves a lot of these women exposed to predatory forces. Again, cue the invasion. Shit's going to be really easy for them. But you have a society of men fearful of being men. You know, there was somebody I know who claiming to be trans. I'm like, no, you're in my head. I'm like, you're an autogynephile. I know that you started this with sexual interest in yourself going forward. Super, super nice person. Super, super close to family. So I'm not like tossing any judgment or anything like that. But I'm like, you're not trans. But was telling me about an ex-partner or ex-boyfriend, whatever, who went on the estrogen process because they wanted to get rid of their toxic masculinity. And this was after they dropped out of the military or got kicked out of the military, one or the two. So they felt like their toxic masculinity was contributing to their poor mental health. So they went and started getting estrogen to tamper down some of that masculine energy. And I was told this like it was a normal thing. I just kind of head nodded and was just kind of like, oh shit, really? Then what? Then what? And kind of going with it because I wanted to hear more, but I was just screaming inside of my head, like, what the fuck?
I can't imagine estrogen making those issues any better.
Oh no. No, and if this is who I'm thinking it was, oh god, no. You know, there was, I don't know if this was the same person, but in the same circle. Well, I think I already told you about it, how there's this kid, like maybe 20, 21, who was sitting there like, yeah, my parents won't accept my pronouns, and my sister, who's been trans for X amount of years, she won't even call me by my pronouns. So she's actually and has internalized transphobia. And I'm sitting here with a man with long hair, quite frankly, like myself, with a bit of voice training, which he liked to show off whenever he'd make it go high and then wiggle his throat a little bit and then make it go down to normal, which was kind of crazy to see. I will say he did a lot of fucking vocal training on that, but it was also just like, you know, it's kind of like I told him, I'm like, man, just have you thought about calling your parents and just saying like, hey, I know we're on different sides of thing, but how are you doing? I still love you. No, your parents are the enemy. Okay, well, it's so sad.
Trying to find meaning and help in all the wrong places.
It's coming from the devil that is Big Pharma with those false promises. We can make you a woman. You know, we can save you from suicide. We can turn you into an alien. We can do this. Which is so sad because the more this is going on, I used to love the body mod community. I really, really loved that. And I still do to a large degree, but some of it's a lot of them are starting to get wrapped into the ideology too. And it's like, no, you were so separate from all this, and now you're like intertwining with it. And it's like Lil Swastika is a really good one that I like, who was trans, used to be covered in swastikas, but would go to all these tribes all over the world and get their temple's version of the swastika tattooed on them. So nothing doing with Nazi ideology. But then I think about the time where they started switching it and wanted to phase that out and started doing a lot of blackout tattoos over it and stuff. That's when the ideology started to creep in. And, you know, now they're making videos with their little daughter being like, oh, your gender doesn't matter and you can be whatever you want to be. And I'm sitting there like, oh no. Because it used to be a cute thing where the daughter would just come into the shop and like they'd be tattooing and they'd be doing art projects. And they had this whole wacky property that looked like a psychedelic, you know, kingdom. But because this person's getting so entrenched in the ideology, I'm just like, oh shit, you're pushing this off on your daughter now. And it's just kind of being publicized. And I'm like, God damn it. It's a very interesting thing to watch, but it's also just like watching even those people get captured who, I don't know, I feel like most body mod people at one point would have been considered more far right, at least in my opinion. But because like these types of people are being worshipped now, and because everyone wants to be like them, I think a lot of the ego is getting into their heads a little bit. They're like, oh, we were the pioneers. We knew the world would be wacky and wild one day, and now that it is, they're just kind of going with it.
I mean, it's also weird watching the trans. There used to be an intellectual interest in transhumanism of what will happen to human biology later. And because we can imagine, nano machines or cybernetic implants and all sorts of wild stuff about that. And one guy implanted his fare card. An Australian guy implanted his fare card into his arm. So instead of whipping out his fare card from his wallet or pocket, he would simply put his arm against the reader. Which became an interesting thing because the way the law was written was the card had to be shown. You couldn't just run the chip. So that was an interesting legal case. But the thing was, in the future, I mean, if you can do it, why not? Now, you're going to end up with some safety issues that need to be negotiated, but the technology is starting to advance to the point in which people can modify their bodies in all sorts of ways, some of them productive. And then this trans thing comes in, where people are being subjected to a whole bunch of medical risks, like rates of osteoporosis are skyrocketing. Guess why?
Well, and if you think about it too, everyone's gotten so normalized to the medical harm and the medical abuses at this point. If this had started with technologies and they started putting chip implants into people right off the fucking bat, and people were getting cancer or their bones were deteriorating or shit was happening to their bloodstream, then the trust for big pharma would have gone out the window like immediately, and all future plans would have been put to stop then and there. So it's almost like, in a weird way, they're sacrificing all these kids and all these people in order to get that going first, because they're like, if we use them as the shield and we get people in their emotions, then we can do the robot shit.
But by wrapping the money-making scam in an ideology, they prevent a lot of the pushback against the shady behavior.
And they have the gay and the trans community and allies around their fucking fingers, like with this whole monkeypox thing. I'm sorry. One thing that freaked me out after the COVID shit was dropping is whenever they tried to bring monkeypox in, like I think it was a year or two ago, and they tried to get people all hyped up about it. I was like, okay, honest evaluation with it. I'm not getting down with another pandemic scare. But this one seems to particularly hit the LGBT community because turns out it spreads from getting fucked in the ass. Um, that's pretty wild. And I was hanging out around a gay bar at that point, and monkeypox was never mentioned, never addressed. They like to do like the condoms and STD safety and sex positivity and all this shit. It never came into their minds, but all the COVID shit was still in there. You still had to like wear a mask and do all this shit. But I'm like, why are they not acting on the monkeypox thing? And I'm realizing now it's because nobody told them to. Like, I'm just casually watching YouTube the other day, and two drag queens come on from a CDC commercial, which I tried to YouTube and couldn't find. So it could be AI. I just want to throw that out there. But it seemed to be two drag queens that were sitting there from the CDC talking about monkeypox is coming in, and it's the minority communities and communities of gay and all this that get hurt the most, and make sure you get ready to get your vaccine and all this crazy shit. And I'm like, if that's real, they've been given the go ahead. Like, they've turned the gays into foot soldiers. And again, Anthony Fauci was mishandling the AIDS crisis, and we let him mishandle COVID, and now he gets to deal with the next gay disease. That's not fantastic. And not even just a gay disease, because they got everybody interested in sexual exploration, and everybody's tried fucking each other in the ass at least once at this point. Let's be real. Like, they got everybody testing the waters, and now they have this virus that it's going to affect a lot more than just the gay community, but it's going to be painted as that because they're trying to get as far away from that as possible. And then simultaneously saying we can't call it monkeypox anymore because that might offend black people. I'm like, well, it sounds like y'all just called black people a monkey. That's what I just heard, is y'all see black people as a bunch of monkeys and y'all don't want us fuck. Okay, that's what we're fucking doing here. That's the level of deflection we're going to go to on this one. That's how I'm starting to feel like this is going to be a little bit more something they're going to try to push.
Well, I remember a bit of a media blitz campaign about it a while ago, and now we're in the middle of a new media blitz about it.
I think that was just a psychological test. I feel like they wanted to get data on everybody, post all their CDC permissions with all their tracker tech. I think they wanted to see who was running their mouth about monkeypox and who would be a problem going into this. Because there's people making music videos about that, like, I'm not taking the damn vaccine, and there's people making all sorts of statements. They held in there for longer. Most trends in this country, most events will happen from like anywhere from like a week to a month, or at least they did. When that went past a month, that's when I started getting a little scared. I'm like, oh, are they really considering this?
Well, there was uh, about a year ago, there was consistent messaging, and a bunch of these NGOs are very reliant on the CDC for other medical assistance. And a lot of journalists are integrated in the gay community in one way or another. So any messaging that is targeted towards the gay community ends up getting exponentially shared by mainstream media journalists.
God, friendly reminder for people out there, we are not fucking oppressed. For all of this shit. For all of this shit. Gay people are not oppressed. That seems like the heartstring they're gonna tug on for a minute there. Just remember that as shitty as all this is, we're doing fucking fine. I could still get married in all 50 states. Like, shit's still cool. Trump's not on Project 2025. Like, it's okay to be gay in the United States of America. The only problems we seem to be having is they're transing us and all the gay kids at this point, and they're sterilizing them, and they're butchering, and there are problems within the gay community that need to be addressed, but getting a vaccine so we can get fucked in the ass isn't one of them. And I'm not taking the goddamn vaccine. I don't give a shit. Until people start rotting around me like I'm living in a Resident Evil movie, I'm not taking the vaccine. You know, not to throw a pun in there, but get fucked. Like, it's not going to happen. And I wouldn't advocate for it on this channel because I think it's a fucking trap and I think they're going to weaponize it. Even if the vaccine itself isn't a weapon, they are going to weaponize the event the same way that they weaponized COVID. And that's going to be my fucking stance on it. I'm not playing this fucking game again.
Well, here's how I see it. Kinsey, you know, the guy from the Kinsey report, he was arguing that casual sexual encounters were psychologically healthy and that any medical problems from STDs could be conquered by modern medical technology. Of course, he was writing decades before the AIDS crisis. But one reason why the AIDS crisis is kind of forgotten about now is because there are so many medical treatments for it. But guess what? These medical treatments cost money. South Park did a joke about why did this guy live so long after getting AIDS? Basically, money. Pouring huge piles of money and injecting it. So high-risk sexual behavior, which frankly a lot of gay men engage in, is going to be one of the main vectors for new STDs being discovered. I talked to a doctor, and he was telling about how this was in the 70s, but doctors used to monitor some rock stars to see what new STDs they would get.
Which rock stars?
He wouldn't say.
Damn it! That means you know it's one of the good. It's the good ones.
Almost certainly. But here's the thing: lots of sexual encounters means that if there's any STD or any disease that could become an STD out there, it'll probably get picked up by them. So high rates of sexual encounters with lots of partners from wide walks of life, you're going to end up with rapid transmission of STDs. And when you've got rapid transmission of STDs, you've got people desperate for a cure. You've got lots of public health risks because, oh God, this is spreading. That could hurt the economy. So lots of reasons for government funding. And you've got lots of political activism that can go along for it. So who's going to make money off of another disease coming out?
CDC.
So there's going to be, so as long as people engage in sex with lots of partners and anonymous partners, that sexual exploration is going to be a constant churn for new STDs, new need for medical treatments, new need for political activism. The high-risk behavior becomes highly profitable for people in the right place to make money off of it.
Part of me is wondering at this point if they held off on monkeypox until the generations that were this sexually engaged got to a certain point. Because, you know, I mean, I'm thinking about how much sex people were having even like 10, 15 years. Like when I got out of high school, I'm going to college, people were banging. I was a grinder hoe. I mean, I was just like, you got a nice dick? Let's go. You got a nice dick? Let's go. You got a nice dick? Let's go. So like I get it. But even then it felt like exponentially less than what I hear about from people now. And for a lot of people, I think for a while there was just like this like they couldn't get laid because they like or get a date. Let's start with getting a date. They couldn't get a date or get a partner, and they felt lonely, and their heart was broken because they're not working on themselves. They're sloppy. They're drinking June alcohol. They're doing all the things that society's done to break kids. I think for a lot of people in that desperation of not being able to get a partner began lowering their standards, which meant being willing to embrace the idea of taking in more kinks, fucking different kinds of people, trying new things that they wouldn't have considered otherwise had they just stayed the path and realized, hey, the right one will come along whenever the right one comes along. And at least my theory is maybe that kind of fueled this to where it goes from you're going online and you're looking for someone to date from someone to fuck, to where it's commonly known at this point, eHarmony isn't there to fucking find a love of your life. Grinder, you're not there to find a date. You know, none of these apps, you're not there for human connection. You're there to fuck. A lot of the times you might even be there for drugs. You could be there to be getting kidnapped or get your fucking throat slit. You might be going there to get fucking raped, but you are not going there to find the love of your life. And for the outliers, that's fantastic. And there's obviously going to be those people, but for the mass majority, most people go into it knowing they're going to fuck. So if they're feeling fucking horny enough and they wouldn't fuck a trans person normally, or they wouldn't fuck in the ass, they wouldn't do this shit, they might feel a little more inclined to do so. So now that people are doing that in mass, well, what a coincidence that the ass fucking virus is coming along. You know, no, it's not what it is, but I mean, it's just like timing. All these things, just the timing seems perfect for so many of these things.
Well, if people have given up hope of real romance and emotional connection, high-risk sexual behavior is how some people try to cope with it. And I mean, viruses pop up because of human behavior. We notice STDs because of changes in human sexual behavior. So the more people give up on romance and just go for casual anonymous sex, the more we're going to see STDs.
Like if the kids don't learn to back off on this shit and that this isn't cool, it's just going to get worse and worse and worse and worse. But the problem is too, is then you have like a lot of these migrants, people in from other countries coming in that don't share our values, that they probably like fucking too. And now you have all these different populations mixing in with the American population and the American culture. And there's a lot of sex that comes with that, be it good or be it bad.
And anytime we know this from respiratory viruses, anytime local environment has its own viruses and diseases, and people's immune systems adapt. When you get a bunch of people coming in from different places together, they start trading viruses. and then you suddenly start to feel really sick. When you have a lot of young people go into the military for training, you've got people from all over the country. Guy from Colorado has viruses from Colorado. Guy from New York has viruses from New York. Guy from Texas has viruses from Texas. So everybody starts to feel respiratory viruses and pink eye and stuff like that. Now imagine that's applied to sex.
It's like I never even really considered it until recently. It just makes so much goddamn sense because, like, obviously STDs are an issue. Like, a lot of people got STDs, not even just around here, just in general. But like, I mean, we're not just talking about like crotch itch. Like STDs can shut down your entire body, can keep you from fucking walking, can keep you from fucking thinking. Quite frankly, a lot of the shit that they do to fucking trans kids, would just being fucking disabled, and then you're fully reliant on big pharma. And all the meanwhile, you're going to be leaving this earth sooner than expected. So someone's saving money.
So the ideology, so somebody's got to pay for keeping people alive. Somebody's got to pay for taking care of people who are injured by STDs. Either it's going to be the person who engaged in the behavior or the public or all other insurance payees. So there's money to be made by encouraging stupid behavior.
Well, and like the medical system here, they're not ready for monkeypox. The Eugene hospital is shut the fuck down. I went to the Springfield hospital the other day because I had to go for something, and I asked them, I'm like, so is that ever coming back online? They're like, no, it's dead in the water. Like there's nothing to be done there. They just built like new bridges and new buildings and did all these renovations that you could see them working on. They like built new sides of the building, and after the construction was up, the building shut down, which also makes me think they're going to use the building for something different in the future. But so Eugene, everybody has to go over to Springfield now, which is a smaller city, less of a population. The hospital has to take all of those patients now. Even during COVID, I got in and out of the hospital pretty quick because while they were saying the hospitals are overrun, I got out in like an hour and a half. It really wasn't that bad. And there was like local news saying that the hospital I went to was overrun. And I even asked them, they're like, no. But now the hospitals are fucking overrun. Everybody's lost fucking OHP. The wait was so fucking long just to get in. And once you get in, there's still a long wait because there's more people to go to once you're actually in the room because they have like a full hallway of fucking people now. And yeah, it's like if this does cause damage and this does cause a wave, good luck going to the hospital or the doctor for anything else. Good luck getting your surgery. Good luck getting your medication. Good luck getting your fucking testosterone. Good luck. Because I can't think of another hospital anywhere near. I mean, there's 2 hospitals in the city to be sure, but it's still not enough for the population of 2 towns being wiped out with another pandemic. Because at least there was the Eugene hospital during the pandemic. Yeah, when I went, my friend was in the institution there because they were having mental health problems and suicidal ideation. So they went into one of the facilities there, and it was the only part of the hospital still running. And their insurance ran out, and the hospital, they're essentially like kidnapped him and said, no, you're going to stay here until your insurance pops back online so that way we can bill you. So I think we stayed there for over a week, and me and my husband went in there, and it was like Arkham fucking Asylum. Like the doctors were check the fuck out. They looked as high as the fucking patients. We went to the quiet room to sit with our friend and talk with him, be like, how are you doing? Brought him some books and shit to feel better. I'm looking over and there's this old woman like borderline pulling out her hair and she's like losing it in the other room. And there's a nurse just sitting there with a TV remote, widescreen TV. And there, I think there's literally like, it's either a Jim Brewer bit or maybe it's even Bill Hicks, but he makes a joke about how CNN, it'll just flash war, famine, plague. It was literally doing that on the TV. It was like war, civil upheaval, COVID-19, and the words were flashing on the screen along with like the type of imagery you'd find on my channel, quite frankly. And this woman's just losing her shit while the nurse isn't giving a fuck. And then I was hearing about different beatings that were happening in there and all sorts of other abuses. And my friend's like, I can't get out. And shit, if I could have snuck him out, I would have. But there was no fucking way. They were locking that bitch down. But that was the only part of the hospital that worked.
I don't know local law, so I can't say for sure, but I don't think hospitals are allowed to hold people while waiting on insurance billing.
And this is something I've been hearing about happening in mass. I've been seeing news stories pop up about this for other people all across the country too. It's like a thing they're just doing to people.
However, I do know that even 10 years ago, there was a known issue where about half of hospitals had a whole bunch of disciplinary problems with doctors and nurses. That it was very hard to recruit people for hospitals in a lot of places. So they had to take people who were not well suited to the responsibility. And by not well suited, I mean suspected guilty of sexual assault or harassment or scamming people or drug abuse, stuff like that.
Yeah.
So there's a human side to the medical system, and that human side has been cratering in the past decade.
Well, if I'm remembering right too, like my friend said that there was one good person there, and wound up talking to her a little bit and talked about his job on the outside, and which is a retail job basically. And I guess whenever he mentioned the pay to her, her eyes kind of lit up and was like, "What?" And I think she was just making minimum wage or close to.
Almost certainly. There's different types of nurses, but some of them have very low educational requirements and they get very little pay.
So probably just wind up selling the Ativan to make up for it.
No comment.
That's what it felt like. I was just like, it's like walking into prison and these just aren't your people and they're just staring you down and you're just kind of trying to be like, hi guys, go to see my friend.
At least prison has rules.
Yeah, I felt at their mercy. I felt like if I acted up, I was going to get a needle in the ass and not come home. So I was just like, best behavior. I even brought a Bible for my friend and everything, which was a genuine gesture. It wasn't me trying to kiss ass. I'm like, maybe my buddy could use a Bible right now. But then they're looking at my tattoos and looking at the Bible and they're like, and I'm just like, get that. But it was just so fucking hostile. The energy was horrifying. I'm like, yeah, hopefully it's not still in operation, but to know the rest of the hospital was shut down and it's just like, there's just this one little dark building in this dark corner of the lot that all these college kids are just drunkenly stumbling past, and back in the very back of this dark building is just borderline torture. Dude, it freaked me the fuck out. Like, and I've been to a mental hospital when I was a kid. This was something else.
There can be a lot of horrible behavior covered up by medical bureaucracy. And it's sometimes disquieting even to doctors. So the doctor who told me about the rock stars with STDs, he also told me about some of his visits to mental hospitals and wings of mental health wings of various hospitals. Those were quite often cases where sincere doctors had thrown up their hands and given up. And that was decades ago when people probably were a lot more serious about this than now.
Mm-hmm. Can't be an easy job at all.
There's a joke about two psychologists. One of them is old, haggard, and consciously anxious, and he meets a colleague at a conference who's the same age but looks young, happy, and healthy. And he asks, My God, how are you so happy after hearing about all this stuff? What else are you listening to? And the healthy looking psychologist says, who listens?
Jesus Christ. God damn it. I mean, geez, that's kind of like how I'm feeling. Like, I'm not a therapist, but I love psychology and I love hearing people's stories. And whether it be people in my sphere or people that I'm meeting through this or just videos or interviews I'm finding on YouTube. Oh, I feel like I'm losing my hair over this shit. It's getting fucking learning this is a lot of weight to like keep constantly engaging with this stuff, even though I kind of always have to a degree. Now that I'm trying to like make it a more focal effort, it's rough. I mean, there's a reason that Jordan Peterson cries as much as people want to fucking make fun of him for it. There's a reason that man breaks down the way he does because he's met so many people, have gone through so many things, had so much of his own experience to apply that there's just shit probably flashing in that man's head that none of us can ever comprehend. You know?
Well, I can guarantee you that some of the stories you've told me would shock some of my old classmates for a week.
God. What's
There's a
fucked up is I
lot.
haven't even told them all yet. That's the fucked up thing is it just feels like it just goes in my life. And again, I got a
know.
platform for it now, but
I was sitting in arbitration class, and when I simply told about a guy I was carpooling with, whose wife's ex-boyfriend got out of prison and needed a place to stay, some of my classmates were looking at me like they couldn't imagine that, and that's not a particularly dramatic story. It's something people deal with every day.
it's just so crazy like what we all accept for normal. And I think that's another thing I'm realizing having more of these conversations too is like we all just have such a different level of normalcy that now that everything's come to the forefront politically, socially, psychologically in the way it has, those levels of normalcy are all just starting to collide with each other. Because like to me this is just like I'll be telling people these stories and it just sounds like me telling a story, and then I like look at the look on other people's face and I'm like, oh yeah, you're different life, different life. Even my own mother, my mom's like, what the fuck? You know, she's living out in the suburbs, doing her thing, do, soccer mama, going to school, teaching kids. And she's like, son, what the hell is going on up there?
I am telling you, they wouldn't believe half of your stories. Now, I've seen enough crazy people to say, "Oh yeah, that's entirely believable." But it's one of those things where the people who are functional enough to get sucked into the higher levels of leadership tend to be insulated from the craziness. So they try to judge things from their own well-protected background rather than what everybody else is experiencing.
Like, how do I bring up everybody with me? Like I'm so high and mighty. Like,
Where it's I can't imagine this causing a problem. I mean, legalizing all drugs, I can't imagine that causing a problem. I smoked pot a few times. And meanwhile, there's a guy who lived next to a bunch of homeless crack addicts, being a bit more, maybe something shouldn't be legalized. Very, very different backgrounds, but a lot of the people in high crime neighborhoods end up suffering some psychological effects from it that make them unlikely to be competitive at higher levels of bureaucracy.
yeah. And now you just get slammed. So, like, there's a one example I could think of over in Eugene. I think it's Washington Jefferson Park. There's a big old park, and it's kind of like where the off ramps to come into the city are. And there's like a skate park, and it's sketchy as fuck. I would always avoid walking over there because I always felt like I was gonna get stabbed or something. There was always something shady going on. But as the drug increase happened, there's people across the street who lived in the apartments and the buildings that were trying to raise their voices and be like, hey, this is kind of bullshit. And I remember seeing shit on social media like, oh, they're just racist and they're just bigots and they're Nazis and all this shit. And these
I
people
think
are like,
that's
hey, we feel like we're going to get stabbed.
I mean, it's a common pattern where majority poor black neighborhoods have a lot of the homeless drug addicts or migrant shelters shoved off onto them, uh, while the rich white areas get the police. Rich people get police, poor people get tolerance.
And the police here just spread so thin. Like, it's starting to feel like even the rich aren't starting to get them, and I think that's kind of the point. Like, I'm sitting here living in a suburb, like, wanting to get out of here after the election because I'm like, I'm pretty far away from the city, but it's like, I could see them fucking doing a protest over here and shit popping off. It's just like, it started happening towards the end of BLM before things started simmering down. I feel like, at least in my time, to where we started marching through more of those types of neighborhoods. It started streets, apartments, neighborhoods that won't chase you out, which we never really got chased out, but more people were likely to close the blinds or come out. And a couple of people would come out with guns and just stand and stare. And some people would come out and film. But it was clear that the more middle class you went, or the more suburb or the more higher up you went, the less positively you were received. And then that would just infuriate the protesters more. Because eventually they're going to want to go to a different playground. That's going to be the thing. It's going to be neighborhoods.
I mean, I watched some video of an apartment building in Portland with a graffiti against ICE being scrawled on it. I don't think anybody from ICE lived in that building. It was just a block or two away from the ICE facilities. But it was kind of, why are they going after this building? Is it just because the ICE facility was guarded by cops and they just saw a soft target, or what?
I think they want the message to be broad and clear. I mean, as someone who would go out and graffiti and spray paint, it was like, you want people to feel like they're in the environment they're in. Kind of like how now I'm doing it more positively with music and trying to create, express myself more artistically, to be like, look at the hell we all live in. I think I kind of wanted that with even the simple, like, I just kind of did ACAB, Black Lives Matter, that type of shit all over town. But it's like, I wanted it to look like a Watchmen comic when you were coming through, because it all felt like the end of the world. It all felt so dystopian. It all felt so intense that if the people who agreed with it saw it and walked by, they'd at least feel the same way and feel a call to action. I think if I were to deep dive a little bit of that, how I was feeling.
Okay.
I think a lot of other kids do that too. They want you to know, like, when you're turning the street corner, or a lot of times, like around here, you'll see them right when you're pulling into town. There'd be ACAB spray painted on a rock on the side of the mountain or onto the side of the walls coming in. It's very much like, this is the environment. Don't forget about it, while also simultaneously marking territory, because anything pro-Trump or right-wing, that gets spray painted over. And sometimes there'll be tag fights, of course, over who gets it, a cab or whatever the fuck. And then there'd be like Proud Boy taggings that would look exactly the same as Antifa taggings. And it's like, the Proud Boys, I know a lot of people have problems with Proud Boys. I have a different perspective on it now. I'll at the very least say they aren't the type of that are going to go around spray painting Proud Boys. Maybe Antifa, if they want to like have people think that Antifa is doing some graffiti, but no one's going, oh, I'm with the Proud Boys, and spray painting that on the back of a toilet and running away. So it's kind of like whenever kids are freaking out about like the Heil Hitler salutes going on out there, I'm like, half the time that's probably not even a real Heil Hitler salute. They just want a reaction and to pretend to be something and run away.
Okay.
Yeah. Stupid shit.
Well, um, there was a about 20 years ago, the main theory was people acting out because they want attention. And that sounds a lot like it, but the kind of situations you're describing suggests there is kind of an underlying everything is terrible, but people aren't articulate enough to explicitly say what specifically is terrible. So it just becomes a burn down the system rather than a here's what's broken, here's what needs to be fixed.
Yeah, like you're spiraling, you're freaking out, you're gonna slam your head against a wall, you're drinking, you're on drugs, you're sneaking around in the shadows at night, paranoid that a cop's gonna fucking find you or someone's gonna see you and fucking snitch, and you're putting your fucking message on a wall, and then you're running away. But what happens the next day? You're still in the same place. Everything's still fucking going on. Things are still fucking falling apart. And I think for a lot of these tagger kids, it starts as tagging and then it goes into the bigger shit. Like, oh my god, the spray painting isn't enough. Fuck, I gotta go take it out to this window. Or, oh, now I gotta go take it out on this car, take it out on this other human being. Because it's like, I don't want to say chasing a dragon because a dragon implies you've already had the high, but it's definitely a descent. And it is a cry for attention, I feel like. It is, but not in a look at me sense, in a look at what I'm scared of. Why aren't you all as scared as me? And for those who are as scared as me, do something about it, even if it's mimicking this act and putting another tag on a wall over there so that I can feel like this message has gotten out. Because, like, sometimes you might walk around and you see another ACAB in that neighborhood, and then you might get the thought in your head, oh, well, without me putting up that first one, that wouldn't have happened. Good for me.
Okay.
Yeah, I was guilty to the point afterwards where I went and tagged over old tags because it also added to like a feel of paranoia, but it's just like the cops aren't really handling that type of shit, don't really care. But in my mind, I'm like, fuck, I went and I spray painted the street and this fence and this building and this and this that. But I think they also kind of help served as reminders to the dissent because I'd be walking down the road and I'd see something I did and I was just like, fuck. Like the more I was coming to my senses, the more and more it like kind of stood out to me as like a bad omen. To where eventually I just kind of was like, well, the spray paint's already there anyways. And actually, I don't even think I think one or two of them I spray painted over. The other one I paid a friend who I knew wouldn't have a problem with it. I gave them some money and I was just like, hey, do you mind spray painting over these for me? They're like, sure. But there's definitely a psychology to why a lot of these kids are doing what they're doing. And it looks stupid and it looks childish because it is. But I think for me, it's just like there's something going on in their heads. And this is something they want to express but don't know how. They're operating in mimicry.
And I wonder, well, there's another side to this. Why aren't the adults figuring out what's going on? Why aren't they asking questions and trying to resolve the situation by asking more questions?
I think a lot of people, I mean, A, there's like, you got to work to survive. You know, prices around here are out the fucking ass. And I mean, you have a society of people that can't hold together relationships. Well, then you have a lot of people who are single, living on their own, a lot of commune situations here. So a lot of people find themselves in crazy situations, kind of like I do, because they jump roommate to roommate. So they're jumping from turbulent environment to turbulent environment to turbulent environment. And I think here, you know, Portland in this area kind of used to be known as like an early place to retire, to like where everyone, like the young could go to be old, where you can go and you can be a musician, you can be an artist, you can live that hippie lifestyle and life won't get to you that hard. Just like make it bare minimum and then you'll take care of the rest. And if the state needs to hold your hand a little bit and get you on some welfare, well, thank God it's easy enough to do that. Now that that's collapsing, I think a lot of the adults in the room are. I think a lot of people who could be spending time engaging with this, trying to fix this, have been put in a situation where there's certainly the instances where they aren't willing to, but I think a lot of people just can't, either because they feel like they can't or they financially or physically or mentally just can't because everything's gotten destroyed so fucking fast. But I mean, I feel like that's why the adults trying to do something do stand out. Like a lot of the podcasters on YouTube or people like yourself, like there are people trying, but it is so far and few. And with the parenting thing, it's just like I feel like parents they're tuned the fuck out because they've been taught that the soft parenting is the way to go because it feels good. You know, to them, so long as they feel good and their kid's smiling and telling them the things they want, then they're doing the right thing, even though they're not doing jack shit for their kids. So their kids are only going to go out and learn from the world or learn from their friends or learn from TikTok or TV or whatever. And some of those kids, like I said, are looking at those ACAB signs or looking at those anarchy symbols or looking at whatever. And they're like, that encapsulates what I'm feeling.
Parents as smiles rather than as protectors.
Yeah. And I mean, that's what I'm dealing with here from that story I shared with you last time. It's just like, you're not protecting your kid, and now you've been served up to predators on a platter. There's a lot of that. There's a lot of that. And who am I? I've never had a kid. Who am I to say these things, right? I just don't know what it's like.
I assume that you remember being a kid and have thought a bit about, hey, that didn't go so well.
Yep. But that's the narcissism, because it's scary to know that like narcissism, it's a psychological trait. And at one point, at least in my time, I feel like it was just something you had or you fucking did it. And if you had it, you needed to work on it. But now I feel like so much of it's been induced by everything happening that majority of Americans are being bred into narcissists, or they're being groomed into narcissist.
There are some personal advantages to histrionic behavior in an information network. We live in an attention economy, not so much an information economy.
Mm-hmm.
So whoever is most capable of getting attention often gets ahead. And that attention can be gained for good reasons or bad reasons. And there's also a lot of situations in which the first person to act gains most of the benefits. So whatever pushes a person to be the first person to act, and quite often it is either irrational optimism, blinkered narcissism, a lack of concern for other people, will cause people to act first. So a lot of systems in our society encourage people to be narcissistic or histrionic.
And again, that's why I think the whole clown thing is so relevant, because if you look into the psychology of the Joker in DC, that's kind of the psychology of the Joker.
For a moment, I thought you were talking about the city I'm living in, rather than the comic company. But
oh shit! Oh, there's just this shit's just all so fucking insane, man. Oof. I need to get a damn chiropractor when I get back to fucking Texas. I'm worried about tattooing bent over people for hours on end. I stand up now, my whole body just locks up.
do you know how to stretch your back?
I have one of those inversion tables that kind of helps with it. And yeah, I just got to get better with the stretches. My husband's been better at it than me. I got into a bad wreck. Then I went to go see Rise of Skywalker. My friend pulled out, and there was a car coming in the middle of the rain with no lights and slammed into us, and we went spinning off the side of the road. And I jerked it just right to where, I guess it's like right in between my little spinal disc or parts or wherever the fuck. It's a pinched nerve.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's like in my lower back, so like everything just kind of curves funny until I can slowly get it to get upright again.
Yippee.
Yeah, it's a daily pain. I think that's what chronic pain is, right? When you feel pain every single day.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's what I'm dealing with. I've been dealing with that for 3-4 years. But I haven't got hooked on painkillers, so that's good.
Well, you'll probably live longer if you don't.
Yeah, no shit. Everybody's going that route. They're like, I'm doing great. And I'm just like looking at them I'm like, you're really fucking not. But I'm glad you're feeling good.
Oh boy.
God.
I mean, people like to blame the Sackler family, but they weren't the only people involved in the opioid epidemic. It's well known that hospital rating scores tend to go up if people are given painkillers.
Believe
So
that.
there's a so one part of Obamacare was using patient ratings for medical organizations to determine how much funding or latitude they might get. Can you see why that might incentivize doctors to give people painkillers?
Noting that. Oy. And to what degree can the same thing be said for psychiatric medication?
There's much less of an incentive for that. One,
Okay.
because hospitals are not legally liable if a former patient goes crazy. Now, there was a push to hold doctors liable if somebody gets released and then goes and commits a crime, but there's no legal mechanism for that. Just a PR problem for them.
That's one I really want to deep dive because the years as a kid that I was prescribed on antidepressants and antipsychotics and anti-anxieties, I felt just kind of like a, I don't know, just like a lab rat, and I was just constantly being thrown on and off medications. The more common ones I know were Abilify, Lexapro, and Concerta. And I was looking at something for Lexapro yesterday. I just started the video, I hadn't finished it, but I guess there's been like a whole thing where people who took Lexapro early on, once they get into their late 20s, they start to have this fucking mental snap. And I haven't got to the point where the comparison's made yet, but the video basically compared it to lobotomy. And this girl's talking about, taking psychedelics and having all these crazy experiences and going into out of forms of psychosis. And I'm just like, a lot of it was adding up to my childhood, but a lot of it too is like the older I'm getting, I'm like, I'm wondering how much these medications fucked with me. Because I was
Uh,
never like mentally present in the room when I was receiving them, so I never like had like dates or times or anything like that to like document my journey really. But the older I get, I'm like, it fucked with me somehow. What I'm dealing with is more than just like autism and like super spooky spiritual psychedelic whatever. They're fucking with people's heads.
okay, so it's escitalopram. That's an SSRI and considered generally safe. So I'm not. The thing is, excessively high doses of SSRIs can produce anxiety and nasty side effects, but in low doses, it tends to be pretty safe. But a lot of doctors don't actually understand the mechanism by which this stuff works. So there was a known issue where they would give way too high a dose for people, and for kids, the effects tend to be more unpredictable than with adults. So if you give psychiatric medication to kids, you also have the risk of distorting their ability to handle the world without drugs.
Mhm.
So there's a known issue with ADHD medication where if kids get put on it, they perform about the same as everybody else until adulthood, and then they perform worse. But if they don't have any medication in childhood and then maybe get put on medication as an adult, they do much better.
I can see that. It's like, because there's just so many of these kids on it, so many people that I know and that have gotten older. It's like we're all a different level of crazy. It's a different level of crazy that I try to like bring a realistic look into on my channel. It's a lot of us were diagnosed this way, and for me it was like high doses, low doses. We're doing this now, we're doing this now, we're doing this now. And also with the rebellious attitude of, I don't feel like these are working, so some nights I'm going to spit it out and some nights I'm not. And I think it led a lot into like my drug addiction too, because the first time I ever smoked pot, I was just like, oh, I felt this before. Like I realized that I felt high before, and that it was most of my childhood. And I was like, is this why time seemed fucking weird? Is this why I just spotted in and out and my grades were falling and I was having all these psychotic snaps and like, oh, rageful, murderous fits? I'm gonna kill that fucking bitch 'cause she fucked me over. Talking about little neighbor girl next door who happened to tell my brother that I was smoking cigarettes. Like all these like insane lashing out moments that they were saying was like, oh, it's bipolar, it's this, it's that, which it could have been very much, but
Um,
a lot of shit.
with genuine bipolar disorder, and I'm not talking bipolar type 3, there's SSRIs become dangerous because it ends up SSRIs are dangerous for genuine bipolar disorder. It can trigger a mania.
Which is weird because I feel like I've known a lot of bipolar people on SSRIs, like particularly women.
Do they genuinely have bipolar disorder, or rather do they have what's type 3, which is just oftentimes a way of hiding borderline personality disorder?
I was gonna say one of them had a personality disorder particular that I'm thinking of, like the new personality is trans, of course, but has taken multiple identities over time and all sorts of. I haven't seen this person in years, so I couldn't give a diagnosis. But yeah, what's the difference between bipolar 1 through 3? Because the thing is like for as much as that term's plagued me my entire life, it's always one I kind of stayed away from because I was just like, I have something going on. There's already a lot being evaluated. I already have enough shit going on. So it's like if I do have it, then I need to understand that it's a place from emotions going back and forth and how do I mitigate those emotions. So I haven't actually like gone into the literature or watched any videos or gone into the DSM or anything. Can you give me like a breakdown of what the different 1 through 3, or if there's any more, or a bit of breakdown on that?
Bipolar 1 and 2 is very much a biological phenomenon. And it's known that there are certain things that seem to trigger a wild mood swing, and because of the pattern, we can see it's a strongly biological phenomenon and not just, oh, you're a little happy or a little sad. It can be wild stuff like obsessing about starting a business and then hacking a neighbor's dog to death with an axe because they interrupted your thinking. Bipolar disorder, usually, most people with it are better able to restrain themselves so they don't do something really, really stupid. But a genuine mania, a genuine manic episode is not the person in it might perceive themselves as being full of positive emotion, but it is not the wild and wacky Hollywood event of let's do something fun.
It's more sadistic.
I won't say sadistic, but it's uncontrolled. And that can mean things like driving 90 miles an hour from one side of town to another because you're desperate to do something.
Yeah.
There's something chemical going on with someone. Decreased sleep, higher adrenaline, also all sorts of things that play into certain kinds of chemical reactions in the brain.
See, I'm not going to diagnose myself right now. That sounds a lot more like me in my past, especially younger on, out of high school, angry, lashing out at the world, just doing
But
crazy shit at wild emotional moments.
but there are several things that can cause people to lash out and be violent. And the thing is, a mania lasts from several days to maybe a couple weeks.
Yeah.
Whereas something that's more routine, you can have people lashing out for many other reasons, like PTSD or generalized anxiety disorder or other things. So,
Could they exist simultaneously?
yeah.
Because I just see so much of what you're saying right now. I'm thinking of a lot of shit, and I'm just like, gosh. Because like the, I'd have like weeks or month and a half, 2 months where I just withdraw from the world, and I'm in my crazy world. I'm fucking starting fights. I'm putting my fist through a wall. I'm slamming shit. I'm smashing phones. I'm talking in tongues on the street, doing crazy ass shit, and then I just snap back to normal and ties back. It's a dark part of myself. It's something I try to stay super far away from, but it's just like,
Probably the only thing that really stood out to me as maybe bipolar was talking in tongues. But I mean, you could have PTSD that could explain
definitely
the
that.
impulsivity and aversion to human contact.
CPTSD, my therapist says, I'm complex.
Yeah, CPTSD could explain some of that. So it's just one of those things where there's a whole lot of stuff that might explain what's going on, but that's where you need huge amounts of details. And if someone reacts with mania to an SSRI, don't put them on an SSRI.
Yeah.
And that's more of a clue that they might have genuine bipolar disorder and not bipolar type 3, which just seems to be uh, a disguised way of saying borderline personality disorder.
The more I do this podcast, the more I'm really like, I'm going to go to school for psychology and just do something with at least learning about it. Cause this stuff is just so fascinating. Cause it, not even just like instances of like, think of my own personal sphere, but just, sorry, was it? I feel like we all just have these people that come in and out of our lives, and we're always plagued with why they behave the way they do and why they are the way they are. And some people can like brush past it a little easier, but I'm always someone that always like thinks of the people that came in and out of my life, and I'm like, why? Why did that happen? You know, I got to evaluate why did things happen on my end first and foremost, but also like what was going on with that type of person because I always have an adverse reaction to certain types of people. And the more I understand the human mind and learn these types of things, it's like, oh, that makes sense. But it also kind of like humanizes these people in my head and makes me feel more sorry for them than angry with them, you know? Kind of like, how could you be expected to know all these things to lay out your entire life? Because for me, I just fucking obsess about this shit. And I think I sometimes get angry that other people aren't doing the same level of obsessing. But it's like, how could you this day and age with a lot of things?
Uh, there's the more people think about their own behavior from a critical viewpoint, the more likely they are to be accurate, but the slower they are to react. And so much of life is just showing up first. So a lot of what people are trained to do is to react and not think. And if you're thinking, well, then you're not reacting.
Yeah.
So there are some things where it's very good to stop and think and to make sure you've got things right, but a lot of people they don't grow up in that kind of environment, or they aren't trained to reacting that way.
It's like a lot of society has like this Peter Pan syndrome. Like I said, it's so hard being like 27 these day and age because like I saw what 27-year-olds were like when I was younger. It was a very different level of maturity. Now it's like someone's life could be completely falling apart, stepping on your own, shit's just going to complete chaos, and you just kind of chime in with, "Hey, notice your life's kind of going to shit. Notice there's a lot of chaotic things coming on. Maybe as your friend, I should tell you this." And there's just this insane sense of, I'm an adult, therefore I can do whatever I want. Don't step on that. Don't bring reality into my face. And it's like, eh, I mean, there also is the other end of that coin that says I'm an adult too that can also make my choices. And my choice is to say, this is insane. And for anyone who's been listening to my shit, we know that generally the people I come in contact with are going through some pretty insane shit. In instances without judgment and with. But I mean, otherwise I would just be keeping my mouth shut, just blowing in the wind from crazy to crazy to crazy like I was for a while, but I don't know. People need to realize that part of being an adult means being humbled, and that you're going to have to get called out, and that you're going to have to be put you're at people are we're not encouraged to make suggestions. People always have to like apologize for like, well, I hope I don't offend you, but I just want to, or no, no, and pussyfoot things, and it's just like, just go full force with it. Remind them while there's still a generation that you can remind this of. Remind them of when they were a kid, and their parents just kind of said what shit was. Hey, the world doesn't revolve around you. Hey, you're being a shithead. Hey, your actions have consequences. Hey, you shouldn't have done that, because in like less than 10 years, we're not going to be able to say that to people anymore, because they're either not going to remember or they're going to be too young to have ever had any parenting like that. So it's like, it's almost like you gotta kind of hit them in this nostalgia and be like, okay, this has happened within a lived period of time. I'm very young. This has happened within the last 27 years. Somebody at one point in your life told you no. Now, you may not have liked that no, and you might have gone and done some crazy shit based off that no, but you need to go back to the reality where people are told no. No, you can't go be racist and burn down the buildings. No, you can't lynch black people. No, you can't lynch white people. No, you can't run around saying the N word. No, you can't be doing this. And it's gotten to the point where every decision we're making has to be legislated. I think I was listening to Radical Center kind of talk about this the other day, to where every little impulse we have is coming down to like a legislative decision, to where we have it's getting to the point where we're getting in the mindset of we have to make laws for every little thing, because we're not taking care of things on a social level, and that's just leading to authoritarianism, because once everything is legislated and on the table, whether it's good or bad, at some point or another, everything's up for being amended.
And that's a known problem. People who can regulate themselves don't need the government to come in with a sledgehammer and try to regulate them. And I mean, government bureaucracy is sometimes necessary, but it's a sledgehammer. It's not a fine instrument. And all this talk about big data, no, that's not going to solve that problem. If you have a blanket rule enforced by the government, it's going to be a sledgehammer.
Yeah. And I mean, even the people right now who want to counter Antifa, be them on the right or the left, to whoever, just got to realize that meeting violence with violence is just going to fuel that. I think that now more than ever, I kind of see why the peaceful protesting measures were so vital and so important. Because younger on, when I was being more foolish and had more of an anarchistic mindset of these things, it's just like, why be peaceful? Why? Why? Otherwise, they're just going to come down on you later again. Then they're just going to fucking hit you down the line. And now it's like, no, because if we allow ourselves to get to a certain degree, it's going to be a million times worse. And I get now that it's a fine balance, but we gotta seize that and figure that the fuck out, because again, it's like, as much of a heart as I have for the conservatives right now, even in the UK, I'm like, a lot of those conservatives out there right now, they just want to burn. Now, whether they have good thoughts in their heads and good intentions, or the same shit that gets talked about on this channel and these conversations applies over there. And it's just like, I feel like a lot of those people 2 years ago wouldn't be doing that.
Yeah, I think there's been a drastic loss of not just hope, but a loss of focus on a concrete plan to make the situation better. And I think a lot of people are used to the idea of trying to establish reciprocity. That is, if you do this to me, I should be able to do this to you.
Mm-hmm.
But that's not exactly strategic thinking, and it's very easy for one attempt at reciprocity to end up being used as justification for broad crackdowns, like we're seeing in the UK. A few people ended up doing criminal acts, and that was the justification for arresting a whole lot of people who did nothing worse than post snide comments on social media.
Yeah, and what's going to happen then is, because a lot of those people that have been invading this country that are going to be activated, and on top of the foreign forces coming in, what have they just done? They have completely squeezed their police departments and their jails. Because now it's overcrowded, now everything's broken, now they can't handle it because they're arresting everybody under the goddamn sun, which was kind of antithetical to what the far left wanted to begin with, was less prison, no prisoners. We need to empty the jails. The jails are overcrowded. People are being abused because of these conditions. People are being starved. People are being raped. People are being beaten. Drug trafficking in the prisons. Well, now it's just going to happen a million times worse. So congratulations. Like, everything is backfired. Everything is completely backfired.
Yeah. I mean, there was an interesting article that came out about a week ago about how right-wing authoritarians, when asked if they filled out a number of survey questions of, are you in favor of one strong leader, da 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 da. And the people who met the criteria for being considered authoritarian, who are right-wing, admitted, yes, I am authoritarian. The left-wing people who met the criteria for being authoritarian denied being authoritarian.
I can respect an honest fascist. Again, just if you're owning your shit and that's who you are, I don't have to agree with you, but I'd be like, hey, at least you're not fucking bullshitting me. Like, I don't respect fascism at all to any degree, but let's stop pussyfooting
Remember,
what these people are.
Mussolini did not make the trains run on time. The Democratic government before him did. But he managed to take credit for it. But here's the thing, at least if people acknowledge their assumptions, you can dispute it, critique it, and point out where they got it wrong. Where people lie to themselves, the result is that then it becomes almost impossible to correct the situation, because there's always going to be a discrepancy between self-assessment and the criticism coming out.
We just live in a total state of disconnect.
The situation right now is bad, and it didn't get bad by people just complaining. It got bad because people stopped listening to complaints and concerns.
And I mean, hell, without getting too deep into the weeds, or fuck it, I'll slam my old job a little bit. I had a OSHA complaint filed with the job that I just left because the kitchen was temping at like over 120 degrees. The AC hadn't worked for 2+ years. I accidentally told one of the good managers that I reported to OSHA, so they brought in people to fix the AC while they were coming through the building. So I fucked up on that one. But I put on there, this has been happening for over 2 years. Food is spoiling because of this. It's leading to bitterness. A lot of the back of house are, literally getting heat exhaustion. I think I've almost dropped of heat exhaustion a few times, and it was just, I can't say for sure, and I'm like bouncing around it because my husband definitely had it worse because I worked with my husband, and after 9 years, I've never seen my husband this close to fucking death. Very much understand, but very much realize that HR is not there to represent the workers. They're there to represent the corporation. Because everything that she told me, they've sent me back in an OSHA report in a letter. Everything they said verbatim to me in the office about the conditions and why they were upset that I got OSHA involved, OSHA just sent me back in a letter. So they basically just repeated what they said and sent it back to me. Now, thankfully, I got fired before I got the letter because I would have quit anyways because I ran my mouth and honestly said mean things that I shouldn't have said. So I'm not going to pretend like I left
Well,
on any virtuous ground there. I was an asshole. So,
there's probably you probably might have been able to get it resolved more smoothly if you had simply threatened to call OSHA.
oh no, tried.
Oh, you did try bringing that up.
I tried for 2 years everything,
Okay.
and it was just at one point. This is how good the gaslighting was. Is after the OSHA report was filed, and I was talking to my other manager about it. I'm like, look, I'm about to file another one if this one doesn't get fixed. I'm seriously getting tired of this. She's like, they fixed it, and for a minute, I was like sitting there and I'm feeling the air and I'm literally having to rack my mind. I felt like the meme with the girl in front of the chalkboard with all the equations going off, to where I'm like, did they fix it and I'm the asshole? But I'm sitting there like still feeling like I'm about to drop fucking dead, drenched in sweat, can barely breathe, and I'm like, the fuck they did. And she's like, what are you talking about? They were in the other day. I'm like, you need to get out of that office more and feel this because no.
Well, I mean, people who are too hot work slower. So there's also a practical reason, not just bureaucratic requirements to have good AC in the back of house. But wow,
Yeah, and the other dishwasher apparently leaves food all over the plates, all over the dishes. Nothing gets done. He's slamming shit around, and I'm just like, hope you fuckers miss me.
uh, golly. I mean, at least the back when I worked in a restaurant, the back of house had decent AC, and I'll also point out the manager's office was in back of house, about 15 feet from the dishwashing station.
Oh, then they'd really have to feel it. Ours is right on the other side of the AC, right next to the kitchen. So it's technically back of house, and they think they feel it, but I've been in that office. They don't.
That the office in the restaurant I used to work in, it was small, cramped, with no air circulation.
Oh, God. Like a janitor's closet, basically.
It was more crowded than the janitor's closet.
Oh,
That
man.
said, AC work in the back of house. Uh, uh, During my time there, the managers were getting more and more active in making sure things were hygienic. I mean, they were also cutting people's hours because they wanted to look good for corporate, but that was another thing. The
Yeah.
thing was, they could directly see if there was a hygiene or a safety issue.
Yeah. Like I said, I have the type of managers who let a man walk around with a butcher knife and sat them next to a family of 9. So we're not dealing with the most competent people on the fucking planet here. Oh man, and if my husband didn't still work there, I'd fucking say who they were right fucking now, but I can't. But and one of the things that HR asked me that really pissed me off, they're like, "Well, are the ACs working in the front of house?" And I'm like, "Well, of course. They always are, always have been. Don't you worry about that. We're talking about the back of house right now." And oh, you know, I'm glad I am an asshole to a certain degree because I had to get tough with the HR lady because she's like, Well, I know the situation's bad because here's the thing. So I live in a 2-story house, right? And I'm a family of 4. I think she said some weird shit like that. And she's like, so it gets really hot in my house and all the heat travels up. So when I'm in my bedroom, what I have to do is, and I said, okay, that's fantastic and everything. And I'm sorry that you have to deal with that. But A, that is nowhere near comparable to my living situation. B, our living situations have nothing to do with how the company treats us while we're at work. That is completely irrelevant to the point. And then, so we had some fires going nearby in Oregon. They were scared about the OSHA thing. So what happened is she's like, well, what we need you to understand is we have a bunch of stores in the area, and right now we're having to work on filtering out the smoke so that people who've lost their homes, they can come in and have a meal to eat. And then also the workers who need to make money in case they need to flee from the fires, they have a job to go to. And what you need to realize is if something like this were to go through here, people wouldn't be able to eat, people wouldn't have a place to go, people wouldn't have their jobs, and then all your coworkers, they wouldn't be able to get paid. And I'm just sitting here getting like
Because they
redder
won't
in the
fix the
fucking face.
freaking. Because they won't fix the freaking AC. They're trying to guilt you using sympathy for other people for what is fundamentally an operational issue.
I told her I'm not going to fall for emotional blackmail. Like this is ridiculous. I'm like that is an abuse tactic that I'm not going to operate with. So I totally hear what you're saying, but also I see the tone from which I see where you're coming from with it, and no. And I said I expect this to be dealt with. Otherwise, I will be reaching back out to OSHA again.
You called the HR people out on their abusive tactic? Wow.
Oh, I use Joshua Slocum language on him. Again,
Oh
this is
boy.
why learning from therapists and psychologists is great, because that bitch didn't know what the fuck to say. They expect you to be a retard. She didn't realize that she was negotiating with me. She didn't think that I knew we were in a stage of negotiation over the whole report and me wanting to back down. And yeah, I just called her out on her fucking abuse, and I literally have been pulling shit from the conversations. I told her, I'm like, you need to realize that this is not personal to you. We are dealing with a managerial crisis in this country. And what you need to realize is that this is everywhere. This is at the Walmart. This is at the Home Depot. This is at the Subway. This is at the malls. This is every single place you go where you can't get good service and you're wondering why things are falling apart. It's things like this. It's the disconnect between the top and the bottom. So I'm not going to fault you for that. But the fact that I told her, like, the fact that the managers are coming in or the owners are coming in, and then we all of a sudden have to change our behavior and become a new character and then become ourselves again when they leave the building, that is a sign of the disconnect going on here, because you are not seeing us for who we really are. Also, you're never checking in on the cameras. You're never coming in and doing safety checks. You're never coming in to work with the customers. When the winter storm happened, the only time we saw the owner was when he came in to charge his son's 3DS, because his neighborhood got frozen out. Man lives at the top of the hill, at the top of the butte, where the lights were on, where my lights were off for 3 fucking weeks. I saw his neighborhood with fucking lights on. Man didn't come to fucking help us once.
Wow.
I was literally joking at the time. I was just like, for all this anti-commie shit that's going on right now that I'm on, I really am starting to get it, because what the fuck? Shit made you want to fucking riot. And I don't mean that seriously, obviously, but yeah, no, that's why I think podcasting is useful. I just started throwing shit at them that I've learned from talking and listening to people, and they're like, we don't know how to handle this. Which is like, that's kind of the thing. It's like, I was texting you the other day. I'm like, I feel like there's this demon inside of me that I'm just like, there's this angry thing that's just wanting to burst. And I think that it was just, once again, me needing to get out of a bad environment, but also, again, probably not handling leaving that environment in a healthy way. But now I'm on to a new job, and I found the ex-Antifa guy, so God works in mysterious ways, I guess, but that's turbulent.
That company sounds incredibly dysfunctional, but I mean, that seems to be the pattern from what I've been hearing from Oregon.
Well, I mean, I'm going to name the company, and everyone's just going to be like, of course. Whenever I move, I'll name it, but everyone's going to be like, oh, yeah, sounds about right. Didn't eat there to begin with.
I mean, I've had my own complaints about working in a restaurant, but nothing there compared to what you're describing.
Yeah, that's our levels of normalization, I guess. It's like I feel like I'm sitting there losing my shit and I'm not keeping up enough and like I'm not doing my part and like I'm the one going crazy. And then I get out of it and it's like, oh no, you're tolerating a lot more than you probably should have for a very long fucking time. But the pay was good. You know, that's another thing. Is like I've never been in a job where I've gotten like I think it was like 2 or 3 pay raises. I think like two. But I never had a job where I had any pay raise, you know, A, because I never asked and felt confident enough to ask, but also because I never stayed long enough. And I was feeling really good. And it was a job that I like also got sober at, minus the weed, of course, but California sober. So I feel like it taught me a lot. And like, I actually cried for 2 days after that. I was like, I know I fucking did this to myself, but I feel so fucked up and I let go of a good thing. But I think it was all for the better. Because these jobs can psychologically torment you.
Okay, well.
Sorry, I turned that into a therapy session.
I mean, look. Restaurant people, when they get off work, talk about restaurant stuff, or at least the ones in the DC area do.
Oh, that's about
So,
right.
so the people at my restaurant, the chef, several servers, me being a busboy, we get off work and we just go to a nearby restaurant, have beers, and gripe about work.
That's about right. My husband's going to cook for years and years, and it's restaurant horror story after restaurant horror story. A lot of good stories sprinkled in there too, but I think I've only ever watched the first episode, but there's a show called The Bear. It's got that kid from Shameless in it. But the whole first of the episode, it's just them all in a kitchen, and it's just them all fucking going in, and shit's getting faster, and they're all fucking screaming at each other, and shit's getting wild, and it's just like, fuck you, get your fucking shit together, you fucking piece of shit. And then by the end of it, they're like, all right, another day, you guys. It's a lot of what it felt like. And it's just like, in a fucked up way, I kind of liked it.
I think you might have mentioned it was at the chain.
Oh. Yeah, shit. So we're gonna edit that out. We're 150 in.
I used to work for Matchbox.
I've heard of, I feel like, but I've never encountered one.
Well, their gimmick was giving out matches to people who asked. They also had a fancy pizza oven. But it's more ironic because local law did not allow people to smoke within 20 feet of a restaurant.
What else were they gonna do with the matches?
So they gave out matches. There was an outdoor dining area that people weren't legally allowed to smoke in.
I love it.
And of all the laws they bothered to enforce in Maryland, they decided to enforce that one.
Apparently, they're trying that in downtown Eugene, working nearby there now, and they're like, you can't go and smoke for 2 blocks down this way anymore. So make sure to go hide and smoke behind the dumpster back here. And it's like, what the fuck? I think they stopped enforcing it after a minute because if it's the same ban, I remember they did it for at one point, but then everybody kind of smoked in protest, and they're like,
they enforced it out in the public plaza area, but not in the back where the truck deliveries were.
yeah, that's about our situation. Jesus, smoking bans are. It's weird what they do in terms of smoking and cigarettes and how they try to fiddle with that still. It seems like it's becoming more of a thing the older I get.
There's a bunch of people who believe that they can finally prevent all smoking, which I don't think is a wise idea, but it's very coercively practiced. Now, I mean, earlier on, I remember the 90s when you would see computers that were just yellow from all the tobacco smoke. You could just see a bunch of smoke gunk in a bunch of equipment. And then as they stopped allowing people to smoke indoors, so the equipment didn't seem to be as gunked up. But you could still see the smokers out there on the run with poor circulation. So when I was in the army, we would have our annual physical fitness test, and all the smokers would be freezing, and they would be wearing their extra jacket and desperately trying to stay warm. And the non-smokers had good circulation, and they were just walking around in February in shorts.
The circulation thing makes sense because when I was younger, I used to be the kind of kid that could walk around in shorts in the snow and romp, and then chain smoking to the degree I did here. Whenever wintertime come around, yeah, I have like 3 or 4 different jackets going on. Like that makes sense. Sorry, not to detract too much there, but yeah,
I mean, Minnesota in February.
hell of a lot worse than here.
You saw all the non-smokers in shorts because that was the uniform, and all the smokers with their exercise uniform, but with the jacket and pants on top of it, and they only stripped down just as the formation was starting.
And that was like an enforced thing. They're like smokers wear this, non-smokers wear that, or was it more by
No.
choice? Oh, okay.
It was by choice. People trying to stay as warm as possible before they absolutely had to be in uniform.
Knowing what's good for you.
So you could see a big difference between the smokers and non-smokers in terms of comfort.
Man, and I think I've stopped smoking again. I got on for like 8 or so weeks, and I think I want to say 3 or 4 weeks off it again. Yeah, I'm feeling way healthier about it again. My lung capacity's coming back. I'm feeling more energetic, and I'm just like, shit. It zaps so much out of you. It takes so much of your humanity and your ugh. So much of it just I don't know what it is. Sorry, go ahead.
Can you get your nicotine fix with pouches or something like that?
I don't like the pouches. The only thing I've ever liked is chewing like grizzly wintergreen, but my husband said I'm not allowed to dip ever. That's been a condition from day one. So
Okay.
and I'm just like,
Well,
damn it. The pouches, I try them, but they just feel so fake. I feel like I got to pick it out of my teeth, and I got to feel like I'm almost gonna black out because I put too much in. And but like my mouth used to blister, and I think I was like 19 by the time the inside of my mouth started eating itself out after a year of chewing it. So
okay.
yeah.
Okay. A lot of army guys transitioned from smoking to pouches and dip because they weren't allowed to smoke inside the trucks.
Yeah.
Uh, okay.
No, I wish so fucking much. There's a lot of it for me. It's a heart rate issue because that with the caffeine, it's as soon as I quit smoking, my heart rate started going down again because I can hear it pounding in my ear half the time, and it just gets really concerning. And it's actually gotten painful on a couple occasions. So the doctor was just like smoking and coffee, and I'm on day 2 with the coffee because working the job I'm at now, I got to do more talking and if I have a bunch of coffee in me, I start to sound like a crackhead, but then I also get super anxious and then I start getting super tripped up on my words and I gotta like try to lessen that. So
Okay.
I hate these things. They're all drugs and they're all so good.
Well, my drug of choice is caffeine. I can do without it. I just don't want to. I can quit anytime I want.
Yeah, I haven't even fully gone with the caffeine. I'm on what is it, the vanilla chai tea. I'm like baby steps, just 2 or 3 of these, then I'm fine.
Oh boy. Once I ran out of coffee, so I ended up getting about 8 or 12 tea bags, boiling a pot of it, and that was my caffeine fix.
Shit. Honestly, I always forget that you can make a bunch of tea at one time. I always just make 1 cup and then we'll go to people's houses and they have like a whole gallon of tea in their thing. And I'm like, oh, that's so smart.
Uh, So in terms of pop culture, I ended up watching the first 3 episodes of Andor. And
How you
that
liking it?
was a darn good show so far. I mean, I'm not at what people seem to be saying was their favorite part, the prison part, but
Yeah, it gets you by the loss. It's a really slow buildup, but it's a show that delivers a great fun payoff. And I feel like it was like reading a book. Like there was all the character development. There was just I don't know. It's nice to have just such a thick layer of plot because so much of the newer Star Wars stuff really it questions the levels. Well, it insults the intelligence of the audience, really. And I feel like this guy came in and he's just like, I don't really know Star Wars, but I know how to make a good movie.
this, I mean, just the first 5 minutes of Andor was impressive in that it had a kind of realistic depiction of a shakedown, and the psychological shock of starting to humanize the people who end up getting shot and changing the perspective on the person who did it.
They do a good job to paint like it's kind of dark all the way around. Like these are some shady motherfuckers, but like everyone's human in their last moments. The please, please, love of God, I got a plan. We can do this. Nope. It's intense.
Very, very, very definitely a good show so far. Now, the mining accident and why he wasn't supposed to say he was from a certain planet, I don't get it. Maybe that pays off later, but
I spoil not.
the rest of it, I mean, it's just freaking very competent. Some elements of it are pretty realistic. The security patrol, elements of it are certainly realistic. I'm sure that someone there either followed news about patrols in Iraq or talked to someone who had been on patrol.
Ooh, want to explain that a little bit more?
The It depicted a particularly incompetent kind of patrolling behavior. I don't remember what rank that security detective was, but he felt like a lieutenant to me. So you tend to have the officer class, which is there to be kind of the organizational interface, make decisions, and share information across the wide range of the organization. The sergeant, who's there to focus on the technical aspects in a much narrower range of behavior. Officer says, hey, let's do this. Sergeant says, oh, yes, or I think that's a bad idea. But a sergeant can't. The kind of conversation between the sergeant and the detective made perfect sense. Fancy speeches are not going to be a big motivator for people who actually want to do a job, but they're probably going to be calm and polite and, yeah, yes, sir, yes, sir.
I love that moment where they're in the transport and he's giving we got to give it everything we got, and some people just don't want to do the right thing, but not us, and everyone's just like,
So maybe what stood out to me was it wasn't just the calm, polite reaction. It was kind of the, confused. What's he doing reaction.
I see.
So there's a difference between the, okay, officer wants to make a speech, we're going to listen and we're going to clap politely, and the, wait, he's speaking to us? Why?
Oh, I see.
That also suggests a kind of lack of connection between the top ranks and the bottom ranks. During the patrol, the lieutenant seemed to be surprised at the noise and the banging. Now, okay, the bangings, that's an alarm signal. You should definitely pay attention to that. Why was the, and I keep on wanting to say lieutenant, but why was the detective not aware of that? There's a lack of communication going on there. There's a lack of awareness of local attitudes by the people who are supposed to be policing that area. That's bad. Oh, by the way, there's a civic forum every month where concerns can be brought up.
They just laugh about it when they walk away. Like,
well, that's not exactly going to alert the political leadership of dysfunctional behavior by the security forces, now is that? So the organization is cutting itself off from negative feedback. So that's going to empower some of the worst elements in their organization, or create a sense among the people who are subject to that organization that they are not being listened to, which can make more violent responses a heck of a lot more welcome.
this is exactly why I wanted you to watch this show. I knew that these were the angles and like these were the things you're going to be looking into more than me. It's just like the systems they put in place. Because what they really did good is they brought the politics and they brought the military and they brought the structure in. And yeah, it just feels also realistic and also relevant, like to a scary degree.
The junior guys on that patrol, they looked incompetent. So are they looking around to see if anyone's following them? Are they looking around to see if anybody's pointing a weapon at them? A guy comes down the stairs angrily yelling, and a guy shoots, and one of the patrol members shoots that guy. What the fuck, man? That kind of impulsivity and stupid reaction should have been identified before they ever went down in that kind of environment. So that suggests, had it been real life, gross incompetence at several layers of the organization. And then the sergeant, was it the sergeant who ended up yelling at that guy to go back to the shuttle?
Yeah, he's like, we got to get the hell out of here. Like, yeah, I'm pretty sure he was a sergeant.
Okay. Pulling that guy, taking away their weapon so they don't do something similarly stupid, good idea. Setting them off by themselves, bad idea.
Because then you've left them unarmed. Shit.
And I mean, you also don't want something bad to happen to him before a trial happens. But you also don't want any opposition people to maybe kidnap them and interrogate them and get info on you.
It's just all heat of the moment confusion. I think that's one
stupidity.
Yeah, stupidity. I think
so.
Sorry, go ahead.
And then you have some people deciding to conduct an impulsive initial attack instead of waiting for other people to finish the cordon. Yeah, that's it. That does sometimes happen in real life by people who are considered stupid. So it had a very realistic depiction of a stupid, badly run security organization.
I love the Star Wars because it was so on task. It had a fucking assignment. It understood it well. It came in and it executed it above and beyond expectations. At least in my opinion, I hope it. I hope you feel the same way towards the end of it as I do, because like the revolution aspect and the level of what the humans are dealing. Well, the humans, they're all fucking humans, but just what the rebels and the people who are wanting to get out of this situation, what they're feeling, how things go down in the heat of the moment. Won't get too spoilery. Just a lot of the things that I saw during the BLM era, you know, the good and the bad, but I think that Andor actually does a good job to remind me of the good in people. It's just, I can't say too much more without getting spoilery. I
All
feel like
right.
all around understands the subject and the people it's dealing with and the factions involved. And I will say there's a couple points in there where I'm kind of like, okay, I kind of feel like the messaging's a little bit communist here, but not in the same way that something like the Acolyte is, which is just like, here's a force feeding of queer Marxism. It's more of a,
Rise workers of the world.
yeah, but at least it's like I said, I can respect somebody more who is at least understands what the fuck it is, or it felt substantive. That's all I'll say, because I don't want to say too much without spoilers. It felt substantive. It felt like I rewatch the scenes and I kind of do cringe at some of the language that's presented, but I'm also just like, for the current moment, it does capture a lot of the attitudes of Americans right now in the current moment. And I don't think the intent is to push people in a communistic way. I think that how the characters and people you have and how they're dealing with it at certain points, it is presented through that lens. I don't know. I
I what I saw from the first 3 episodes seemed to be more of a general
Yeah.
little guy against an uncaring and incompetent political rulers.
Mhm.
But that can be felt through communist theory or through just general human reactions, because the solidarity protests was ordinary people against the incompetent political rulers, but in a communist country against communism, whereas you also had a bunch of socialist aligned people against incompetent rulers in other countries.
Yeah. And that's not to say like the overall themes, like, because by episode 3 it hasn't hit any of those. It's like little brief blips in like dialogue and brief presentation, and then it just kind of goes away. Like, I feel like the show overall is just completely unbiased, and it really is just kind of like, yeah, little guy getting fucked, authoritarian, imperialistic, monsters coming in and taking over everything. It felt like overall, again, without getting spoilery, it felt like just kind of a everybody needs to rise in their own way kind of thing, which for me I just kind of found really inspirational. It's just kind of like a, what are you going to do to contribute to helping stop all of this? So it's kind of like the communist elements that come in, I guess, are more through individual characters rather than the whole overall story, which is appreciated. Because like the Acolyte, it just kind of feels like it's kind of like a show of, this is something that people in our new society are going to enjoy. So you better get with the times and learn how to enjoy this content. Whereas this show is just kind of like, oh yeah, no, communism's a thing, and Star Wars is a place where you throw in all sorts of historical references and theologies and philosophies. So yeah, here's just a little bit of sprinkle of mine and moving on. Like, it was done very fairly and appropriately and artistically, and I don't feel like the show was meant to drive the audience essentially towards revolution, where I feel like some of these queer Marxist people, their content, they just want these kids to lash out and be angry and have something to hate. This show's just like, no, you do have something to fear. You do have things that you need to look out for, but it's about coming together and dealing with those things.
Okay, I'll
Like,
look forward to watching the next couple episodes.
yeah, I feel like you leave the show teary eyed, but you leave it feeling good. That's what I'll say.
All right.
Man, you're gonna have me watching Andor after Star Trek. I'm gonna make time for Star Trek today. That's definitely gonna be happening. Said I haven't been able to watch TV the last few weeks, but
Well, that episode that I mentioned to you, that explained a bit more about why some people are attracted to neo-Nazism and fascism, because they had a wrong idea of what it was like. And that Star Trek episode was written on the assumption on a series of assumptions that we now know are false. But a lot of people believe that fascism or Nazism were efficient systems, as opposed to being very good at creating the illusion of efficiency. So in many cases, it's a historical period piece. There's also the psychological piece of uh, elderly leader who tried to use a ideology for social effect, ends up getting sidelined behind the scenes by shady guy who wants to do really bad stuff.
This one's gonna be fun. Is this the original series?
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, and you emailed me the name of it. That's right. Yeah, the more I've been watching Star Trek, because I haven't watched much recently, but I watched a few episodes after that last one that you had me watch, and yeah, I don't know. It's definitely given me the replacement I need from the lack of politics and like thought happening in Star Wars lately outside from Andor. It's definitely been really thought provoking. I still want to watch a lot of the newer stuff too because I hear they're having like a sick woke downfall, but I want to like actually get to enjoy the series before I destroy myself like that.
There was something there before the current round of incompetence.
Like, and it's just so well done. Again, I'm a sucker for all the yellows and the pinks and all the old I don't know, that vintage look. I'm like, yeah, that's how I want spaceships to look.
Back when color was new.
Still trying to figure it out. Oh man, is there any other Star Trek that, like, in particular, has ever rung out to you as particularly thought provoking, or any of your favorites?
Star Trek Deep Space Nine, especially. I mean, the first half of the first season was frankly pretty bad, but the second half and the second and third seasons was very good.
Okay, I had a roommate that would like binge watch that on a daily basis. I'd walk through and it'd be playing in the background, but I never actually sat down to watch it. But that one takes place just like on a satellite, right? Like the whole time.
On a space station, yeah.
Yeah.
Now
I
they
like that.
do sometimes leave the space station for other things like battles or visiting a planet or stuff like that. But there's a much more consistent cast of characters, and they're much more exposure to the civilian side of life.
More character development. Well, I mean, Star Trek had character development, but it just felt a little more personal. I remember whenever I would tune in. I can't think of anything specific, but
I would even say that I think there is more personal character development in Deep Space Nine than the original series. Notably, I would talk about Bashir.
which one's that one?
He's a doctor character, and he starts out kind of insufferable, and you gradually learn more about what his parents decided to do to him, and him hiding some of his abilities, and then gradually embracing it and feeling much more free and open.
Ooh. And I just want to block out my day and watch TV all day. I think that's what I'm gonna do after this. Been running around like a chick with my head cut off lately. I don't haven't made time for fucking TV lately. It doesn't seem like it's important in like a society where we're all addicted to a fucking screen, but like sometimes you just need to watch a good fucking show.
Um, Looking for something thought provoking or just a way to let your mind relax.
Both. Because I can only relax my mind for too long.
Okay. I don't know. Well, okay, what I look to relax is different. But one of the games that this is a computer game, not a TV show, although I would strongly recommend Babylon 5.
Oh, that's one I never touch. Babylon 5.
I think it's a great show, but almost nobody remembers it.
I'm told Babylon B and Firefly, or Babylon B, Babylon 5 and Firefly.
Fireflies feels more like dumb entertainment that is extremely well done.
It's Joss Whedon, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's some thought-provoking elements, but the bulk of it is not meant to be thought-provoking.
More space adventure.
Yeah. Babylon 5 is very definitely meant to be thought-provoking and politics in space.
I love politics in space. My husband always rolls his eyes when those scenes come on. I'm like, no, this is the best part. This is where the good shit happens.
Well, you can tell it was written at the time of the Yugoslav wars, so.
Oh, shit.
The Centauri and the Narn, that becomes a lot more understandable when you realize there was a lot of outcry over the war in Yugoslavia and the Earth forces bombarding colonies was reminiscent of the complaints about the Yugoslav National Army Navy bombarding the port city of Mostar.
Jesus.
Okay, I studied that war, so these parallels really stand out to me.
Okay, as someone completely stupid who literally knows nothing about that war, can you do a brief rundown of... I mean, I know these things can only be so fucking brief, but for an idiot like me.
Mountain peoples tend to be kind of isolated and hate their neighbors a lot. But the Kingdom of Yugoslavia used to have Slovenes, Croats, Serbs, Bosnian Muslims, and Albanians in Kosovo, and also Macedonians, which were basically just Bulgarians. Big multi-ethnic confederation, and when communism fell, the armories ended up getting raided by various groups. Some countries declared independence, some of them across ethnic lines. So there ended up being a bunch of nasty civil wars and use of heavy weapons like artillery in built up civilian areas.
What years did this all happen? As far as the war's beginning?
1991 to 1995. There was also the Kosovo War, which was substantially less bloody, but there was a huge refugee issue and a few thousand dead.
Jesus.
I mean, some people end up banding around a statistic of something like 10,000 or so artillery shells fired into the city of Sarajevo. That was a pseudoscientific number, but at the time, a lot of Americans believed that there was continuing random artillery fire into the city of Sarajevo, and people were being starved through sieges, etc. The situation was actually more complex, but there was actually a lot of bad stuff going on there too.
Jesus. It's wild that this shit happens all over the world all the time, and we're just in America. I mean,
my uncle was a smuggler back then.
Jesus. Fucking Christ, I bet that's an interesting life.
Yeah. He was ethnic Russian. Let's keep it simple. Ethnic Russian in communist Romania. Joined the army, became an athlete. When the revolution happened, commanded a few units as part of the revolution, and then basically got so disgusted at the new government beating up people protesting the plan to steal the elections. And then he ended up becoming a smuggler when the wars in Yugoslavia kicked off, mainly smuggling gasoline.
Shit.
So he would drive sometimes across the Romanian border into what was then Bosnia, siphon off all the gas, sell it to the locals, and then drives back. Sometimes Serbia, into Bosnia, and sometimes he even smuggled gas into Sarajevo.
That's a
Also,
hell of a resume.
gas in Sarajevo was slightly more expensive than gas in Germany, so the Serb blockade was not exactly all that tight.
I love the spirit of rebellion. So I'm like thinking in my head, I'm just like, what's he smuggling? Is he smuggling like, is it goods? Is it people? Is he like getting people in and out of the
It's
country? It's like
gasoline.
fucking gasoline. I'm just like, hell yeah. We're probably gonna need some of that shit. Oh man. Oh, we've got it so good here. I mean, time's running out on that front, but man, I mean, I just kind of like disappointed myself. Like, I've never even heard the Yugoslavia war, like, at all. I can't think of one other time it's like flicked into my head, and you're sitting here like, I've studied it in and out, and I'm just like, we need a better education system. But no, it definitely gives me something to rabbit hole. Well, Cyprian, as much as I hate to do it, I might have to cut this one a little bit shorter today. I don't got to cut it right now, but here maybe at least by come 3. Is there anything else you want to go into?
I mean, let's see. Did we talk about the Michael Walls, the Democratic VP pick?
Oh yeah. Honestly, so I don't know much about him outside of like he's Minneapolis governor, right?
Governor of Minnesota.
Or Minnesota, sorry, Flitch.
Basically, it's Minneapolis, because very few people outside of Minneapolis voted for him.
Yeah, like, I've got a little bit of that from someone that I've been speaking with from that area, but outside of that, man, I haven't listened to any of his speeches. I haven't tuned into any video. Every time there's a video with him, if I'm being honest, I've just kind of turned it off. Like, there's a sense of I'm going to come back to that. My life's been hell the last 2 weeks, so I've been trying to sort it. But like, also, I don't feel like the fucker's going to be our vice president. That's it. There's just kind of a feeling of like no one can predict the future and anything can change. But like, I just kind of look at that guy and I'm just like, you ever like run into someone and you're just like you see someone and they like really want to get to know you, but you kind of know they're going to be like a flickering thing, so you just kind of know not to get too emotionally invested, and you're like, I don't want to be a dick, but it's like after today, there's not enough here for me to want to get to know you that well. It's
Yeah.
kind of the vibe I get from him. And I don't know if that's a cynical way to look at that because usually I want to like know all about these people and about these things, but I'm just like, there's not enough energy for me to. I don't know. It's not to say I'm not going to, but sorry.
Well, I find it kind of interesting because I used to live in Minnesota.
Yeah.
Also, he was an NCO in the okay, how do I present this? First of 125 field artillery. I was a private in the first of 151 field artillery. Both Minnesota National Guard units, both artillery units. I knew guys who went on the deployment that Waltz did not go on.
Oh, so there's some weight to him dodging out on all
Oh
that.
yeah.
Okay, well, this just made it a little bit spicier then. Let's go. Because, yeah, I was hearing little bits about that, and I'm like, is this just like some draft dodging rumors, or are they just trying to smear? Because, yeah. No, explain this one a little bit more. You clearly have more knowledge on this than I do.
So the thing is, if you're in the military, you're kind of expected to go and do military stuff if your unit is told to do it.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things about the reserves. If you're called up, you're supposed to go. Well, sometimes life intervenes, but the guy still had 2 years left on his contract. And he suddenly retired. WTF.
You think he just wanted the status?
Frankly, yeah. One bit of the social contract with the military is you give people pay and respect, and in return, they're expected to risk their lives, achieve fighting in wars and achieving political objectives. So it's one thing to just receive a paycheck, and nothing happens, so there's no problem with it. But if you're called and you don't go, you haven't fulfilled your side of the bargain. Oh, and this wasn't just some random guy who, I just wanted money for college, so I signed up, and then I now have a kid, so I don't want to go anymore. This was the guy accepted a position as the top enlisted guy in a battalion.
How old? You're only like 34. How old was he whenever all this happened? Because he seems like he's like older, like 60, 70. So it's like, when did he opt into all this shit?
He was when he received his command sergeant major position. I want to say he was in his 40s, which is not unusual.
Okay, it just seems weird because I feel like a lot of this happens like a lot younger in life. So I guess I never hear people going in later in life. So to me, I'm like that. In my head, I'm like, that would just kind of signify you'd want it for the credentials if you're going in that late into the game. But I also don't know much about that side of life.
Well,
so
that's the top enlisted position. The command sergeant major, that's a top enlisted rank. People spend decades achieving it.
Oh, so that wasn't a little thing he stepped into then?
No.
Oh.
That's like accepting a position as police chief. It's not senior to the mayor, but it's a pretty darn important position. And then finding out a riot's going to happen and then just retiring suddenly.
Oh yeah, that's just full blown. Jesus Christ. All right, that's worse than I thought.
So lots of people want to be command sergeant majors. There's a very expensive school to attend as part of becoming one.
That he didn't go, did he?
Promise to keep on serving for a few years after that, because the Army spent all that money. They kind of want people to stick around and actually do the job. And the guy gets a position, finds out about the probable deployment, and retires 45 days after getting that position. WTF.
Such a bitch move.
Yeah, a lot of people are pissed at him.
Yeah, they're like scraping the bottom of the barrel. That's why, like, I know it's not good, but it's like, I don't see this. I mean, I can see them lying about it and saying Kamala won and saying that they're going to be the new president and vice president. I can't see this. Again, this doesn't motivate people. This motivates old people. It motivates my old neighbor. It motivates the people who are looking to retirement. I feel like my generation's kind of made up its decision of where it's going to go. I don't feel like this guy coming in really sways anyone other than this type of shit where it's like, oh, so you're just a bitch. You know, I guess my generation could be like, well, the military's bad anyways, and I'd do that if I were him too. Maybe not realizing the extent of how crazy that is, but it's like, I just don't see any new voters coming in for these people. You know, nothing they've done in the last year or two signifies that there would be an increase or a giant sway away from Trump. Like, do you feel that way, or?
I mean, I think maybe some black people are more willing to vote for Kamala Harris than Trump, because when it was just Trump versus Biden, two old white guys.
Oh shit, you froze.
When it was just Trump versus Biden, Trump did have a reputation for being pretty darn not racist, whereas Joe Biden had said a bunch of things like racial jungle and a lot of rather nasty things.
Yep. Vote for me, you
So,
ain't black.
look up some of the stuff he said in the 80s.
Oh, yeah. I mean, well, the crime bill, too. He was the guy. I don't think a lot of these kids realize, 'cause I know a lot of party kids are into Biden because he's not Trump. This was the dude who started like the crackdowns on raves and like all these parties and like, and it's just, dude was just a fucking monster. And Kamala Harris, she's probably put more fucking black people in jail than George fucking Bush. Eh, it's so.
Kamala Harris, as a prosecutor, the prosecutor has a responsibility to disclose information that could be helpful to the defense. That's Brady v. Maryland. Allegedly, she did not. And it wasn't just a one-time thing, it was a pattern of behavior where she would basically railroad a bunch of people. That's kind of unethical.
And I heard she might have got railroaded too, something like that along the way.
I believe the term is railed.
It could have happened by a road. We don't know what she's up to. I seen the way she slurs. She knows a good time.
So I think that with Kamala Harris and especially Walz is frankly a shitbird in terms of military behavior. But he got picked because he could appeal to his military service and make it look like he had done a good job to people who don't understand just how bad what he did was. So they're not exactly good at appealing to non-Democrats. They're good at making Democrats feel better about themselves.
Yeah.
And there's a very real competence problem within the Democratic Party right now. So Walz's military background, that should have been a huge red flag for a competent research team. Why did they go ahead with him?
Have they revealed? Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Probably because so many people within the Democratic Party didn't want Josh Shapiro. So they picked another alternative that people were pointing out, and they weren't looking for maybe someone with a lot less baggage. Walz's background should have had a lot of red flags, but they went with him. Eric Holder was in charge of vetting him, so I don't know what happened there.
I think they just don't care about the lies anymore. I think realistically they know they can bullshit us about whatever they want under the sun, and even if most people don't swallow it, it's kind of like, what are you gonna do?
And I think that has fooled a lot of Democrats into ignoring their glaring lack of competence. Because the lack of competence is still hurting them. And in order to overcome the loss of trust from it, they have to cheat and abuse people more and more and more. It becomes unsustainable.
Yeah, and I mean, for all the talk about how Trump would be yelling at people behind the scenes, it's like that's kind of what's been going on behind the scenes with Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. It's like they got people in their staff being like, yeah, these people are rageful fucking cunts. They're throwing shit, they're borderline spitting, they're cursing, they're getting red in the face when shit doesn't go their way. They don't want to hear this, they don't want to hear that. It's like, oh yeah, it sounds pretty fucking Trumpy, don't it?
Well, Kamala Harris had surprisingly high staff turnover.
Why? And I mean,
surprising even for DC, with a bunch of type A dysfunctional people.
well, I remember, wasn't she in charge of the hiring process for a lot of the White House staff where they are like, you know, mark on here if you've ever had a history of marijuana, don't lie, don't worry, we won't fault you on it. And then later on, a couple months down the road, they got fired for marijuana use.
I don't know about that because there's a bunch of those questionnaires and processes that are just normal.
Yeah.
So she might have been claiming credit for it, but
What she actually did.
that stuff is probably there already. They did basic security clearance checks do ask if you've used your marijuana.
Yeah.
So
I just feel like firing on the basis of, but this was also something I saw on Facebook. This could have been from a time to where I saw an article headline and I ran with it. So that could also very much be the case where there's more
now
information.
she put people in. She prosecuted for people for using marijuana, and then laughed when asked if she used it.
Like a
And
fucking
she did.
witch. We're not allowed to talk about that laugh. Like, Jesus fucking Christ. It's creepy and weird.
Her cackle scares me.
It's a narcissist. I don't give a fuck about you or what I'm doing. Get over it. Laugh. That's all I've met a lot of people with Kamala Harris's laugh. It's unsettling.
Fortunately, I don't think I've met many people with that, but maybe because I just stay away from anybody who gives off that vibe.
Apparently, I can't do that. That's the thing. Is just like that's kind of the thing I notice with her and different people and politicians. It's like these aren't good people. It's like if you've seen the dirtier side of life, these are the people that for everybody with good parents out there, this is the people the good parents were keeping you away from. The ones they didn't want you going near at the family functions. Like that's why you don't recognize it. It's because thankfully someone kept you away from it. It's like, and not you, just like it's it's why I love Joshua Slocum so much, is because he has just like a nose for like sniffing these motherfuckers out and like giving you a good reading on like this is why they're doing it and here's the psychology of it. And you look at Kamala Harris and it's just like you are a raging, narcissistic, abusive, manipulative cunt.
And she ran for election in California. As you know, California tends to tilt a little Democratic.
A little bit.
She barely won against a Republican in a statewide race in California. I think that reveals just how unlikable she was to Democrats.
God. It's like she wants to keep fucking around with Antifa and all the far left crowd. They don't like her. They do not like her. They may support the Democratic Party for like moving forward some agendas, but they're not going to be holding up Kamala Harris signs. She imprisons people and she encourages police brutality. That's what she does. Or at least
I
that's how
get the
it seemed.
impression her behavior with Antifa was purely transactional. She wanted to use Antifa to justify her role in the party, and Antifa was happy to receive the help, but she's so unlikable. Even the people she uses don't like her.
Yeah. That's the thing. It's like that's not just a relationship you can back out of. Like this channel, I can't back out of the things that I've said about Antifa or the call outs or the messages, or I can't just back out of any of that. I can't just one day pretend like that wasn't me. And one day they're going to turn on Kamala Harris if she gets elected. The far left will turn on her so fast and she's going to be like, what happened? It's like, you opened up this box.
I think they've already started turning on her. That's why there's so much security around the Chicago DNC.
I heard there was a bomb threat, but so far that's the only thing I've heard.
Seems to have been relatively quiet, but rumor also has it that there's a huge number of cell phones that are in the protest area that had also been in secure police facilities. So somebody probably put the word out that the rules would actually be enforced in this case.
Yeah. And it's so selfish too. The level of security for them minus the RNC or minus people like Trump, it's just like anytime shit gets really fucking thick from something that they've caused, it's like, fuck, we need the fences, we need the guards. Like January 6th, it's like, fuck, we need a border fence around this entire Capitol now. Like,
Incredibly
pussies. Yeah, hypocritical pussies.
My guys from my unit were called in to help provide security for the 2008 RNC in Minneapolis.
What happened to that one?
A bunch of people ended up trying to storm the gate, and the National Guard, about 150 guys, had to perform a wedge movement to clear them out. There was also a few isolated attacks on delegates, like some guy spraying bear mace at a 80-year-old delegate.
Jesus.
But that was relatively minor. The Minneapolis police had already conducted some surveillance of the people who were planning attacks on the RNC. And they also broke some laws doing it, which is why the prosecution collapsed. But here's the thing. The prosecutor was prosecuting the RNC welcoming committee, the guys who are planning attacks, was Amy Klobuchar.
Shit.
Do you know who she is?
Very briefly, remind me of her significance. I'm trying to rack my brain right now.
She was a Democratic presidential candidate. She's the daughter of an alcoholic and tends to have rage issues. And a lot of people on the left really do not like her. But she actually barely prosecuted cases. And she's probably on the more moderate wing of Democratic politics.
Has she popped up in recent history as like doing anything? I'm trying to remember like if there's been anything significant in recent years with her.
He talked about Make America Minnesota and Michigan as her answer to MAGA.
Sounds like hell.
Well,
I mean, I've never been there.
Democrat. She's still a Democrat. She's a relatively sane Democrat, but she's still part of the party. So there's probably a lot of under-the-table beef between her, who wanted to stop crime in Minneapolis and even protect Republicans from getting attacked at their convention, and Kamala Harris, who ended up publicizing the Minnesota Freedom Fund to bail out rioters who were burning down Minneapolis. So there is a huge subtext between Amy Klobuchar, Governor Walz, who basically let the city burn, and Kamala Harris, who helped out the people who burned down the city.
These wily ladies. God damn.
Now, I don't particularly like Democrats, but if I had a choice, I'd vote for Amy Klobuchar over Harris.
They really just give us the best fucking choices, don't they?
The Democratic Party has a massive problem, and that's causing them to select the worst people instead of the better options that they already have.
They treat the party like it's the Oprah Winfrey show. Like everyone wants to be the book of the month. They all get their fucking thoughts from there. Everyone loves the new figurehead of the month. You know, fucking Bernie was leading the Oprah show for a while. Kamala Harris is leading the Oprah show. Hillary Clinton's the annoying ass return who fills in when other people can't show up for some reason to the Oprah show. It's just all they treat it like it's a club and a TV show. Whereas like the conservatives definitely do that to a degree too, but it still feels like way less of that shit. I don't know.
I think it's that the top levels of the Democratic Party are very much around individuals. There are powerful individuals and families. The Clintons are an extremely powerful family. The Bloombergs are especially powerful. The Pritzkers are especially powerful. It's very much revolving around people, individuals. Mm-hmm. Whereas for Republicans, Trump is unusual because he is such a matter of personal loyalty, but there was a long history of rival conservative intellectual factions arguing with each other and not getting along. There was a longer history of we all disagree with each other, but we're going to fall in line because the alternative is worse, versus the fall in love with this great candidate. People fell in love with JFK. They fell in line for Nixon. So there's a saying, Democrats fall in love, Republicans fall in line.
Yeah.
Now you can present that as, oh, Republicans are authoritarian, they simply demand compliance. Well, the other way to look at it is, it's okay when Republicans disagree with each other, they just want compliance. But Democrats want love.
Can absolutely see that. And it's maybe more tribal, less submissive. Because it would sound submissive to somebody on the far left, but in reality, yeah, the amount of ass kissing on the left, just these figureheads, it's super obvious at this point, but with Kamala Harris, it's like, oh my God, not only is she a woman, not only is she black, but she is a black woman. Can you believe that? Have you ever seen a black woman in your fucking... Guys, she's a black fucking woman. Listen to her story. Look at her get shit done. Like, oh my God, did you know this about Kamala? Did you know this? And then it turns into like the celebrity gossip kind of chip chirp. And it's... They want to be worshipped.
It does feel like that, yeah. I mean, there's also a cynical political calculation there of when you talk about policy, you suddenly get the attention of everybody who wants a different policy and make yourself a target that way. If you talk vaguely, there's nothing for them to latch on to and oppose you on. But if you talk vague things and hope, joy, vague positivity, there's nothing concrete for people to hate you for.
And that's some pussy shit.
And it's very effective politics. Oh, one of the major reasons why Obama got elected was he was so freaking vague. He allowed people to project all their optimistic hopes on him without actually giving a concrete policy that people could analyze logically and disagree with. I don't have to like it, I just have to understand it.
Yeah. I'm just so tired of these goddamn mind games. It's like, it's something that we're gonna have to deal with for the rest of our lives, but it's just like... It gets... Even for a guy like me, it's just like, it's so mentally fucking exhausting. Just like, you're this commodity, and it's just all based on somebody else's ego. Or wallets.
Yeah, pretty much.
It's like, how can we win this commodity? How can we get the puppy to look at us?
I mean, I think we're reaching a point at which those political tactics are not going to be as effective anymore.
Yeah.
Largely because I think a bunch of people are tired of substance-free campaigning. And now it looks, to some people, it looks like simply parroting the flavor of the month propaganda doesn't show that you're an insider, it shows that you're a brain-dead sheep. So that's probably going to be less effective. And now that we have long-form video interviews, it's a lot easier to demand some substantive look at the person's character and perception. So that's going to look a lot more intellectually credible, which is also going to boost the prestige of people who actually ask hard questions.
Yeah.
So I think we're going to see a change, but it's probably another 4 to 8 years down the line.
So long as it happens, I'm willing to hang in there.
But this election cycle is probably going to be all the craziest things happening all at once, because we have the intersection of a intellectually dead Democratic Party, a media complex that is relying on political connections to keep on getting money, a lot of lower class people who are unhappy and generally hate corrupt establishment, and conservative media outlets that don't have the power and prestige to get the attention for the mainstream outlets to correct themselves. Those variables are likely to change in the next 4 to 8 years. But for now, they're going to keep on doing this stupid, vague propaganda stuff because they can. I don't think they'll be able to do it in 4 years.
And it's just like they're just mocking at this point. Like they're just rubbing everything in everybody's faces to where, I mean, 4 to 8 years, yeah, but I feel like their stupidity could really speed this shit up. Like, it's just, everything is just so blatantly evil. I mean, even outside of American politics, like the Paris Olympics, the closing ceremony was almost fucking worse than the opening ceremony. It's just like, you guys hate humanity. You want to control the entire world. You want to pit the religious against each other. And you want to take everything that you used to do behind closed doors, gaslight people that you weren't a part of, these things didn't exist, and now you want to do it in the open and say, fuck you. And you want to screw people over and play with their wallets and play with their hearts and play with their minds. And it's just like, even like most of the non-religious right now can look around and be like, oh, this is fucking weird. Like they're trying to play God. Like they can't.
Yeah. And I think there's a large social structure that ends up that tries to make money or power by flattering people so they forget about their limitations. And those people who've forgotten about their limitations have power and money, and now they think that they can just berate people into staying silent so they get more power and money. That's dying.
But then also in comes transhumanism. Now I really can believe that I'm more than a human. Now I can be technologically superior. Now I can be medically superior.
And they're gonna fool. There's a capacity to fool themselves, so they will fool themselves. But that's an increasingly expensive way of fooling themselves. And I think it's so expensive and destructive that they're going to sideline themselves through their sheer incompetence. You had a bunch of Antifa people showing up to women protesting, but they weren't threatening because so many of them had walkers. Why? Because a bunch of them had osteoporosis in their 20s and 30s. Why? Puberty blockers.
That's the thing. Sorry, go ahead.
It's a medical tragedy, but the result is they've lost power.
And even if they do want to take it so far, it's like you want to ignore all these people suffering, you want to ignore their pain and their hurt, and then you want to hop on all these brand new medical practices that are top of the line because you've spent so much time ignoring all that other shit. And then it's like, ultimately, these people are just going to become the people they hurt and that they ignored. Is they're going to be like, I want to be a fish, or I want to be a bird, or I want to be a fairy, or I want to be a demon. And then they're going to take the same fucking shit that they gave to the children of the United States, and then they're going to suffer the same fate.
Yeah. The boring older generation of narcissists probably won't go into that. The hip, over-optimistic younger generation of narcissists, probably.
It's like you reap what you sow, but God fucking damn. These people are idiots. What else can be said?
Yeah. I mean, there's a reason why I say that so much. It's not just that there's evil. There's always evil. There's always hatred or greed. There isn't always stupidity.
And stupidity is an easier thing to quash. I feel like it just means that you need to take more time to apply yourself and learn some new things, and just, it's not a high bar. It's like, it's not a high bar to like be smarter than the last guy who fucking walked in for the job interview, or to start a podcast. Like, I'm not that smart of a guy. I just like to fucking talk a lot. Like, the bar's not really high right now. You only have to jump so high to like do something in this society. Like, I think that means it can be beat if shit is this fucking stupid. Then all we got to do is wise up a little bit.
Yeah. And the first part of that is being willing to listen. Oh, by the way, how did those HR people help the company?
God, I haven't heard great things since I left. I'm just like, like I'm taking a $3 pay cut, so that's kind of their middle finger to me. But you know, it does make me kind of feel like I was important. You know, kind of just like, oh, maybe I did contribute a little bit more than I thought.
So this is fixable. A lot of what we're dealing with isn't just the effects of evil. Come on, there's always evil. It's the effects of stupidity. And we can fix stupidity.
Absolutely. Well, Cyprian, think been in about 5 hours. So for all you guys here that have listened all the way through and through this, really appreciate it. I haven't gotten a lot of clips out from the last few episodes. Things have just been real crazy, but I do intend to still start putting out clips. Gonna learn some ways to make this a little more digestible for people, get more on a system. But thank you all for being here. Make sure to hit like and subscribe. And just remember, these people are fucking idiots, and it's not going to take much to beat this, I don't think, so long as we all contribute.
Well, good talking to you, and good luck.
Talking to you as always. You have a good day, Cyprian.